1.069 for those. It's stronger Swiss franc, we would note. Today as well, Brazilian real 5.17. Stronger Brazilian real. Mexican peso stronger, 22.30. Dollar in retreat, stocks up. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. The masters of the diamond world are losing control. For years, De Beers and Alrosa have kept a tight grip on the rough diamond trade. But with the coronavirus wreaking havoc through the industry, that control is now disintegrating. No longer are the 10 times a year sales working, where a hand-picked list of customers had to buy exactly the amount of gems the duopoly offered at whatever price it chose. Both refusing to cut prices, De Beers struggled to generate much interest for a recent sale, and at Alrosa, at least 5 buyers have broken from their long-term contracts. The guitar Kurt Cobain played at Nirvana's 1993 MTV Unplugged concert sold for a record $6 million at auction in Beverly Hills, 6 times the original estimate. Julian's Auctions has sold other Cobain memorabilia in the past, including a cigarette-burned cardigan worn at the same MTV performance for $334,000. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Global News 24.
For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, for the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School, a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise, in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80, or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
What if the world listened more? Maybe it could become a better place. Because when we really listen, we start to notice things that don't sound quite right. They might not seem obvious at first, but listen closely and they stand out like a sore plum. And the more we listen, the more we learn. Our ears help us find belter solutions. And things can change from this to something a little more like this. The new Honda Jazz is a hybrid. Honda, the power of dreams.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and we had some breaking economic news crossing the Bloomberg. U.S. business activity shrank in June at the slowest pace in 4 months, indicating further improvement for the economy as it attempts to break out of a steep recession. The IHS Market Preliminary Composite Index of Purchasing Managers and Manufacturers and Service Providers rose 9.8 points to a pre-pandemic high of 46.8 after a 10-point upturn in May. The data for the world's largest economy mirror progress in Germany, France, and the UK, as well as Australia. And stocks remained higher following that report, with the S&P 500 up 0.9% or 28 points to 3146. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 0.9% or 246 points at 26,269. And the Nasdaq up 0.9% or 90 points at 10,147. 10-year Treasury down 2/30 seconds, yield 0.71%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.5% or 20 cents at $40.93 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.75%, up $13.50 at $17.79.90 an ounce. The euro 1.1334 against the dollar. The yen 106.29. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. 5 years and 2 or 3 months ago. No, it's not a Lincolnian speech. 5 years and 2 or 3 months ago, the dollar was right where it is today. Joining us, Vince Signorella here on Watching Paint Dry. Vince, I noticed this earlier this week. I've been waiting to talk to you about it. I noticed it in a weekend of my reading. The Bloomberg Dollar Index, which I would suggest is really good math, has basically gone nowhere since March-ish of 2015. What does that signify to you? I mean, I guess it's dollar resilience. If you believe that dollar weakness is not going to happen, you've made out like a genius with dollar resilience. Maybe there's no dollar strength. The dollar's gone nowhere in 5 years. What's it mean?
Well, I mean, it's gone nowhere in the sense that, you can't pick a time and say, here it is, and if you woke up 5 years later, there it is. It has varied. It has moved. There's been a lot of conversation, I think, in the last 5 years about where is the best place to invest. And as that has moved around the globe, and we've seen trade wars resolved, and situation in Europe peter out a little bit, and emerging markets going in both directions over the last 5 years, we have seen the dollar move, but it hasn't made a significant, obviously, as you say, significant change from where it was 5 years ago. And I think that's still to do with the great uncertainty the world has as to where the best place to put your money in. And I think it's kept rotating.
But very importantly, folks, and Paul, I want you to jump in here, it's the siren call of an index versus what we really do, which is buy individual currency pairs. Because within that boredom of an index over 5 years, there's been a lot of individual stories that have really moved, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, great point, Tom. That is really the story.
There you go, Tom.
See, Paul, how he does those non-radio answers? Like it's like Peter Navarro in China. No, or yes, or whatever he said.
So, Vince, are you surprised here? When you take a look at some of the risk assets out there in the marketplace, that they continue to trade pretty well, even though we're getting, it seems like, increasing news about kind of spikes in the virus. If I think back to March and early April, the market really was just whipsawing around whatever the latest data point was on the virus. And again, here it seems like the market's kind of discounting what seems to be a much earlier than expected second wave.
Yeah, I don't want to say that people are kind of getting tired of it, but they've been really whipped around in the last few months, and you've become a little bit numb to that data because it is now individual states, but the U.S. number as a whole for the country has been holding steady, and I think people are looking at that. We are obviously seeing spikes in Florida, Arizona, and Texas, but overall the numbers for the country over on a 7-day average have stayed relatively flat, and I think markets are encouraged by that. And I think, as your prior guest Barry Ritholtz said,
who?
We are the cleanest shirt in the hamper, right? It's still the best place to be across the world.
Does Bill Gross get a royalty every time somebody says that? Does anybody know?
I don't know.
Does Bill Gross get a royalty if Ritholtz or Signorella say that? I think he does, doesn't he?
I don't get anything, so I don't know if he's getting it. Good for him. But what you're really seeing, I think, is when the Fed made the move very clearly to support the markets and have essentially said we're here without actually saying indefinitely, the message was given, and you saw risk turn, and you saw the equities markets come up. The need for dollars, both for the Fed swap lines and just for a haven asset, totally faded away. And that inverse relationship between the two is pretty solid. But it's a risk-driven effort. So the more people are going into risk, the less people are into the dollar and the more into emerging markets. And I'm kind of waiting for that to catch up with gold, to be honest. A lot of people like gold and love gold. To me, the trade is looking a little tired because I'm just not so sure what's there left to drive it.
Now, repeat, that's important. We just got a minute here, Vince. Repeat the correlation that you see against dollar dynamics and gold.
Dollar and gold have always been sort of in an inverse relationship, similar to what you see with WTI. But in this particular case, I'm not so sure that correlation continues to hold, because what's driving gold on a lower dollar basis may be the old correlations, but going forward as a haven flow, I don't think you need it, and I don't think we're seeing it just yet.
Vince, thank you so much. Vince Signorella with us with Bloomberg Squawk and the market coverage team that we have. Paul, I want to get to the Apple meeting. I'm sorry we're doing it so late here, but Paul Sweeney, do you expect announcements today?
Yeah, I do. I think we're going to, hear some, nothing earth-shattering, but again, I think the Mac bringing some of that chip manufacturing in-house is really going to be important for them, particularly. If we think about some of the supply chain vulnerabilities that are out there in the marketplace, I think that's going to be a nice timing for them. But I think people are also going to want to get a sense of, the 5G opportunity. It's a little bit delayed here in terms of the 5G phone, maybe a little bit because of the COVID. But the question, I think people are going to want to try to size up that market. And size up, is this a super cycle for the Apple iPhone, or is it something less? And that's kind of where people are right now. So I'm sure they'd love to do it, on a big stage in Cupertino, but they'll have to do it virtually.
I got a buy order in at $400 a share.
There you go.
I'm buying half a share. $400. Maybe. Wait, no, I got that wrong. I'm buying 0.05 shares. I'm dollar cost averaging in.
Yep.
But I got to buy. It's one of those fancy limit orders for.
Yeah, you got to walk before you run.
$364 a share. It's up what 4 million percent?
Exactly. It's
since
just
Christmas.
Extraordinary. Yeah. Those and those 5 or 6 other stocks that we always talk about, Tommy. And that's kind of where the folks have been, I guess, most comfortable assuming risk here in this world we live in.
I'm comfortable to tell you it's a $1.6 trillion market cap. Apple, we'll see what Tim Apple says today. We're up 200 earlier, now up 193 on the Dow. That's 0.7%. SPX up 21 points. The VIX 31.12. Interesting day. We are produced often by Richard Truman. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
The Mini Electric was raring to go until ready, set, stop. We hit the power down switch. We waited. But now it's time to start up again. We're ready with the Mini Electric and whole Mini range online. Showroom safety measures are set, and we're feeling good to go. Find your perfect Mini at mini.co.uk.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing, so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
At Asda, we're helping you shop safely by keeping our stores clean and limiting customer numbers so you can keep 2 meters apart. With our Scan and Go mobile app, you can reduce contact at the till too. Asda, we're all in this together. Subject to availability, mobile data charges may apply.
We're all in uncharted territory looking for ways to support our communities. At Dell Technologies, we're making sure small businesses have the right tech solutions. Dell Technologies advisors are here for you, helping small businesses stay connected and productive while working remotely with Windows 10 Pro and Microsoft Teams. We're standing by you every step of the way. Call us today on 0800 169 1745. That's 0800 169 1745.
Wondering what to play next? Want to know what other TuneIn listeners are listening to right now? Head to the trending section under Browse to explore the most popular stations and podcasts on TuneIn today. Millions of listeners like you can't be wrong.
Looking for your daily fix of NFL news and analysis?
In that. So we had to blow it up into Super Bowl predictions instead.
Look no further than the Pick 6 podcast, where CBS sports writer Will Brinson gets you up to speed with what's trending in the NFL that day, so that you're always in the know.
Yeah, it's pretty revealing of Brinson's methodology for predictions. When he gets mad at people for predicting good teams are going to win the Super Bowl or good players are going to win major awards. That's how you wind up.
Search Pick 6 on TuneIn to listen.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. CDC says there are still precautions to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Wash hands often for 20 seconds and encourage others to do the same. Use hand sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol if no soap or water is available. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
Hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney.
Will technology lead us out of this crisis?
We don't know how many companies can accept people back on their roster.
The Fed seems to have really flexed its muscles.
There's still a coronavirus risk.
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
To wring out that buy the dip mentality, that takes time. Are we looking at a more damaging break in the labor market? Does the shape of the yield curve matter? We're looking at late 2021, early 2022, where it really feels quote-unquote normal.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Two records stick out for me today, Paul Sweeney. A record high reading for the Misery Index and a record for the NASDAQ. We're going to be hearing from Nick Collis, co-founder of Data Tech Research, on why exactly this is so, why stocks may be stuck in neutral. We'll also get a COVID update from Max Neeson, and we'll hear from Larry Fink, Chairman and CEO of BlackRock. That's all to come with lots more. First, let's get a Bloomberg Business Flash with Greg Jarrett.
Stocks are up, Bonnie. This happening as Donald Trump is supporting sending another round of checks to Americans, and data that indicates American manufacturing is nearing expansion. Treasuries and the dollar are retreating. Let's take a look at the numbers here. The S&P is up 0.8%, up 25. The Dow's up 0.8%, up 194. The NASDAQ is up 0.8%, up 80. The 10-year is down 1/32. The yield 0.71%. West Texas Intermediate crude's a little changed at $40.70 a barrel. COMEX gold's up 0.9% at $17.8240 an ounce. The dollar yen 106.27. The euro's $1.1333, and the British pound $1.2489. An appeals court has rebuffed Johnson & Johnson's demand to throw out a $4.7 billion verdict on behalf of 20 women who blamed their cancers on the company's talc-based baby powder, but cut the total value of the award to $2.1 billion. The stock for J&J is down 0.2%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets is underway now. Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney.
Greg Jarrett, thank you so much. We appreciate that. As Greg was just reporting, we have a pretty strong opening this morning with the indices up about 0.6%. Let's get a sense of where the action is under the hood. We welcome Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. Dave, what are you looking at this morning?
Well, I mean, you got to look at Apple. We can start there, if only because, the shares set a record yesterday as the Worldwide Developers Conference started. They talked about how they're going to have the chips that they've designed take over in Mac machines for Intel's chips, which have been there for something like 15 years. They talked about new versions of their software. I mean, a whole lot of developments coming out of that conference. And you've got Apple up 1.8%, so you're talking about another record above $1.5 trillion in market value. So is Microsoft, which is up 0.8% at this point. Tech stocks as a group really aren't powering today's gains so much, though. They're kind of tracking them as much as anything. Financial stocks at the forefront of what we're seeing. And, of course, we have the Federal Reserve stress test results coming up in short order for the largest lenders. So, we'll get a sense of how the industry is looking. Beyond that, it's 10 of the 11 main industry groups in the S&P 500 higher at the moment. Real estate stocks, the only ones that are down, and that index lower by less than 0.1%. So we're talking about some fairly broad-based gains. Not some of the extremes that we've seen lately. Nonetheless, sort of a solid advance.
Dave, we've seen 117 bankruptcy filings so far this year. 117. That's the most for the first half of a year since 2009. How is that not having an impact on public markets?
Well, because it's not like when you get the filings that they come out of left field. People certainly anticipated them. You look at a company like Hertz Global Holdings as an example there, and with all the back and forth they've had about whether they were going to sell shares in Chapter 11, which would have been something. Hertz down today, taking a hit, lower at the moment at a time when. Let's face it. You can see a lot of other companies in Chapter 11. Their shares are trading for pennies. At least Hertz is managing to stay above $1 for the moment. It's lower by about 12%, $1.22 or so. It's really just a case of sort of a shaking out process. You see it in the shale industry as an example. If only because we've seen oil prices come down so far. It's just not economical for a lot of these companies to produce. People kind of understand that. You take your chances in the shares, and it hasn't worked out. But it's a process that goes on, and it's not something that really kind of has interfered all that much with what's been happening in the broader market.
So, Dave, over the last, certainly the last week, maybe the last 10 days or so, we've gotten some pretty, concerning evidence out of certain states about a rise in COVID cases. Yet the market seems to be kind of shrugging it off again, including today. Is it suggesting that maybe the market's not as susceptible to kind of virus headlines that it was back in the early part of the pandemic?
It may be more that people are kind of waiting for the effects to play out at companies. Let's not forget, we're 3 weeks away from starting to see second quarter results. No doubt the companies most affected by the pandemic are going to be talking about, what their business looks like now, maybe not in any kind of detail because so many of them have withdrawn forecasts for the year. But they may well be giving people a sense of how the business looks. And to the extent that you're seeing, an uptick in cases, kind of playing out in terms of companies' business. We know that Apple, as an example, has closed some of its stores again. Yeah. That's the sort of thing that people will no doubt be on the lookout for, given that, we're relatively close to having that kind of detail from companies. It may just be that as much as anything, investors are kind of waiting for the evidence to see what is happening on the COVID-19 front is affecting companies more directly.
We're a few weeks away from a new round of earnings, Dave. What's volume like right now? Are people still trading during the summer?
Well, they are somewhat. Just to take a look at a broad gauge I pay attention to in terms of companies whose shares are listed on the New York Stock Exchange and on NASDAQ. It has kind of settled out the last couple of weeks. Of course, you had the, shall we say, uptick in trading last Friday with the expiration of futures and options, that quadruple witching. But other than that, it's kind of settled down. We had about 11 billion shares changing hands yesterday. That's consistent with what we saw late last week, and at the moment you're at a little more than 2 billion, kind of on a pace where you may well get another day like that. So things are kind of quieting down. Let's not forget we're also a week away from the end of the second quarter, so there may well be that people are to some extent kind of waiting to see things shake out for the quarter before they make any kind of moves here.
Dave, it doesn't seem like the market's too concerned about the next round of fiscal stimulus. I guess we're talking about a $1 trillion bill coming out of Congress. Do you get a sense that strategists or investors are kind of focusing on that at all?
It sure doesn't look like it. I haven't seen that really much come up in research. It may just be that, again, at this point, people kind of waiting for the evidence. And, as much as anything, if we do get some more money being pushed at the economy in that sense, that it may well be a plus as opposed to something that, would be a minus if you don't get it. Because, we've already had, trillions of dollars between, fiscal policy and monetary policy kind of thrown at the economy at this point. So it may well be that people are figuring they want to see that kind of shakeout. And if you get more, well, that becomes a bonus.
Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it, as always, to give us a sense of what's going on in the market here. Again, kind of early trading here in the first 38 minutes or so. We are up about 0.7% on the S&P. And it's just kind of amazing, Vonnie. A lot of folks, we were just talking to Barry Ritholtz in the last hour about the disconnect between the economy and the rising stock market. But again, Barry just comes back with that, the market's a discounting measure looking in the future.
And speaking of economic data, we got new home sales just at 10 a.m. as we were coming on air, Paul, and once again they were up 16.6% in May, which was so much better than economists were expecting. They were looking for a reading of plus 2.7%, so 676,000 new home sales in May.
Exactly, and on those lower mortgage rates, and again, people looking towards the other side of all this. Right now, let's head down to Washington, D.C. for World and National Headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan, what do you have for us?
Well, Paul, President Trump is looking to retool his campaign again with a trip to Arizona after a Tulsa rally that wasn't as packed as he'd hoped last weekend. Before he left today, the president threatened to send protesters to prison for up to 10 years if they try to deface monuments. That warning came on Twitter after demonstrators tried to tear down a statue of Andrew Jackson outside the White House last night. The president says he's going to have an executive order very soon on historic monuments, saying he's looking at long jail sentences for what he calls anarchists. Coronavirus cases continue to rise, particularly in warm weather states like Arizona, as well as Florida and Texas. Now, Dr. Anthony Fauci says he does not see COVID-19 taking a summer break. The nation's top expert on infectious disease testifies on Capitol Hill today, along with CDC Director Robert Redfield and Food and Drug Administrator Stephen Hahn. Texas Democrat Mark Vesey says he'll ask the experts how they're coordinating with President Trump.
The president saying, you can take hydroxychloroquine. We don't need to have that much testing. And then the CDC saying that there needs to be testing. Dr. Fauci giving one set of recommendations. I think it's confused the American public.
That hearing at the House Energy and Commerce Committee gets underway at 11 a.m. Wall Street time. Republican Senator Mike Braun is introducing a bill today aimed at qualified immunity for law enforcement. That could put him at odds with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and President Trump, who is opposed to dialing back lawsuit shields for police officers. Braun tells the Washington Post, now is the time to push the issue. He says the U.S. is at a watershed moment. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nathan Hager. This is Bloomberg.
People love a good story. They like it even better when that story is real.
Is this something strange in the numbers?
Paul Sweeney.
That seems like a big miss to me.
Vonnie Quinn.
New funds getting started in order to take advantage of what might be a moment.
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
If Russia does throw this spanner in the works, what does it do to relations going forward?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
How important is that statement there?
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
At Bloomberg, we know a lot of financial experts.
He's a former president of the European Central Bank.
Your Global Financial Warriors is a classic textbook.
A lot of political experts.
If you were advising the President of the United States, what's the thing that he's not doing that he should do?
And lucky for you, we know a lot of science experts, too.
You talked about those reagents which are necessary for the testing. It's also the behavioral psychological approach.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager.
learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Tuesday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
This is a message from the government. Some businesses are now able to welcome back their employees and customers. To keep everyone safe, it's important you follow government guidance and make your workplace COVID secure. Businesses should carry out COVID-19 risk assessments, put in place hygiene procedures, and help staff and customers keep a safe distance. Talk to your employees, listen to their concerns, and if possible, help them to work from home. Every workplace is different, but by following this guidance, you can get back to business safely and play your part in managing the risk of infection. Visit gov.uk/working safely for more information. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80, or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
And action!
I was offered one.
Cut. That's not on the script.
I was offered one. Get you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was offered one.
Come, boy. I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
What if the world listened more? Maybe it could become a better place. Because when we really listen, we're smart to notice things that don't sound quite right. They might not seem obvious at first, but listen closely and they stand out like a sore plum. And the more we listen, the more we learn. Our ears help us find better solutions. And things can change from this to something a little more like this. The new Honda Jazz is a hybrid. Honda, the power of dreams.
There's a reason flash storage is called flash storage and not electronic non-volatile computer memory storage. From quick and efficient data retrieval to instant scalability, everything about IBM flash storage is fast. It's also cloud-ready and surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £310 for 24 terabytes of all flash. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Find out more at ibm.biz/flash offer.
It's Tune In Sports on this day. On this day in 2003, Barry Bonds steals second base against the LA Dodgers, becoming the first player in MLB history to have 500 career home runs and 500 steals.
Bonds going, and he steals it without a throw, and that's number 500. And that's when they really needed a stolen base, too. Bonds uproots the base.
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
It's 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
So far this session, the S&P has pushed to a 2-week high, with investors continuing to focus on signs of the American economy bouncing back from the shutdown. Investors remain on edge over tension with China after a wild overnight session that saw futures plunge after a White House advisor said the trade deal was over. They rebounded after President Donald Trump contradicted that statement. We check the markets every 15 minutes. S&P's up 0.8%, up 25. The Dow's up 0.8%, up 203. And the NASDAQ is now up 0.9%, up 92. The 10-year is down 2/30 seconds. The yield 0.71%. West Texas Intermediate crude is now up 0.8% at 41.04 a barrel. COMEX gold is up just about 1% at 1783.20 an ounce. The dollar yen 106.17. The euro $1.1348. The British pound $1.2518. American Airlines is set to raise $1.94 billion by selling equity and convertible bonds later this week after increasing the size of both offerings. The stock sale at $13.50 a share is expected to generate about $1 billion. Right now, AA stock is down 5.7%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Vonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, yesterday marked the day, Phase 2 reopening for New York City. One of the areas that got a little bit of relief was the restaurant business. Outdoor dining now allowed as the restaurant industry tries to get back on its feet, to get a sense of how that went and how the restaurant industry globally is faring here in this pandemic world. We welcome Kate Crater, food editor for Bloomberg Pursuits. Kate, thanks so much for joining us. Give us a sense of how you think the reopening of the restaurant business in New York City is going to go. We're all going to be sitting on sidewalks and in the middle of the street, I guess. But what did you see yesterday, and what are some of the restaurateurs thinking as they reopen?
That's a really good question, and I think how it went and how it's going to go depends on who you ask. Because for some people, for restaurateurs, I think a lot of them are just delighted that they get to be back in business and serving people. And, they've been setting up tables 6 feet apart and, all of a sudden, like, activating their parking lots and turning them into dining rooms. But for some other people, it's not a one-size-fits-all situation. And so for some people, they realize that selling a $10 bowl of soup is not financially viable when you can only do 50% capacity and have people 6 feet apart. So it's different throughout. But I think there's a cautious optimism. That's what I would say overall.
Yeah, Kate, there are 27,000 restaurants in New York City. Surely all of them don't have outside room, do they?
No, they sure don't. Not New York City. I mean, the mayor has closed, I think, like 43 miles of streets, and that some of that can alleviate. A lot of restaurants were able to apply for outdoor seating permits in a place like Peter Luger in Brooklyn that has never, ever served steak outside their doors. Got the permit, and as of Thursday is going to have tables outside their restaurant and is turning their parking lot into a sort of picnic area. So a lot of restaurants can take advantage of it, but certainly you're right, not all of them can, and not all of them want to.
Just to follow there, I wasn't sure if you needed a permit. How does the permitting system work, and how much does it cost?
That's a good question that I haven't applied to a permit, so I'm not quite sure. I know that the permitting went live on, I think it was either Thursday or Friday, so just like 4 or 5 days ago, to have a permit from Monday. So there hasn't always been great messaging from the government. I think that a lot of restaurants and restaurateurs continue to have a lot of questions about what to do. For instance, you're eating outdoors, but what happens if you have to go to the bathroom? Because there's all these rules about distance and how many people can use the bathroom and all of it. So there's still a ton of questions. But the permitting process, I think it went really quickly once people could apply, but the applications went up very late, as I understand it.
So, Kate, I know Leslie Patton and you wrote a story for Today on the Bloomberg, and the headline really grabbed me. 2.2 million restaurants worldwide teeter on the brink of collapse. Can this restaurant industry, is this going to be permanently scarred here?
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. We're never going to, if you think we're going to go back to what it was like in February 2020, we're not. I think there's no way, there's no going back. Everybody has to move forward, and the most successful restaurateurs are going to be the ones who realize that and figure out, see new way forward, an opportunity. But there was a report from the National Restaurant Association that the industry has already lost $120 billion, and they don't think they can be profitable for at least 6 months. And I think 6 months is optimistic, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, for restaurants, you have to be profitable on a weekly basis in order to keep them running, Kate. How will the restaurants that have low occupancy to begin with, I mean, several on my street alone can only fit a certain amount of people. How do they manage week to week if they just don't get those extra 10 customers that they need to make that profit margin?
Yeah, Vonnie, that's such a good question, and I think especially right now in phase 2 where it's all outdoor seating, this chef, Mike Price at the Clam in New York was saying usually you could have a slow Monday or Tuesday, but your Saturday would cover your costs. And now there's so many variables, and also outdoor seating is dependent on weather. So if you have a rainy Saturday and you thought you had sold out, and then you can't fit everybody in, that's a disaster. I mean, a lot of restaurants have been enterprising and turned themselves into like grocery stores and selling cocktails, and that's done a surprisingly good job of helping create income. But I think exactly as you said, it's still like the margins are so slim anyway. So it's a very challenging future.
So just real quick, in New York City, how many restaurants are expected to, just go out of business, I guess?
That's a good and scary question. OpenTable did a survey, and they thought nationally 25% of restaurants wouldn't make it. I think in New York that number might be higher. I think that's a conservative estimate anyway. But in New York, as you guys were saying, space is much tighter, so 50% occupancy is a big difference, like 10 people, like Bonnie said. So I think that number is going to be higher. I would not be surprised if it's like at least 40%. It's a very scary number.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Kate, there's some great details in your story. I would urge everyone to read it. 2.2 million restaurants worldwide teeter on brink of collapse. That's Kate Crader there joining us. And one of those paragraphs, Paul, lays out just how much it costs to change to contactless takeout orders and delivery, of course. And there's equipment, walkie-talkies, masks, thermometers, about $5,000 a month for the average restaurant, apparently.
Yeah, that's the economics on the delivery business. Not nearly as good as the in-store dining.
Kate Crader, and that is our first half hour. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are on the rise with the Dow gaining more than 140 points. President Trump calmed markets rattled by comments about the U.S.-China trade deal. Last night, the president tweeted that the Phase 1 agreement is, quote, fully intact. Earlier, trade advisor Peter Navarro told Fox News that aspects of the trade deal were over. The meat crisis has depleted the country's frozen stockpiles. Red meat inventories in cold storage shrank last month to the lowest since 2014, driven by a drop in frozen pork supplies, according to the USDA. MasterCard is making a deeper push into financial data with an $825 million deal to acquire technology firm Finicity. The purchase helps MasterCard give banks the ability to speed up credit decisions. And in a blow to struggling theaters, Viacom CBS will send its new SpongeBob movie directly to streaming early next year. It was to have debuted in theaters in August. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community. Support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Tuesday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. Why not get road ready with a free car check worth £15 at all our stores and garages? With 25,000 weekly slots available at 700 locations, you can count on us to get you safely back on the road. Or even back beside the seaside. From MOTs to tyre fittings, there's no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80, or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
I was offered one.
I was offered one. Were you?
Yeah, I was offered one too.
1 2 1 2. I was offered one.
I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
How do you keep track of all your favorite stations and podcasts? Easy. You add them to your favorites list. Just find the audio you want to bookmark and tap the heart icon. Then, whenever you want to browse your favorites, you'll find everything under the Favorites tab.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. On this day in 2003, Barry Bonds steals second base against the LA Dodgers, becoming the first player in MLB history to have 500 career home runs and 500 steals.
Bonds going, and he steals it without a throw, and that's number 500. And that's when they really needed a stolen base, too. Bonds uproots the base.
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn. How do hockey fans know what day it is? Just turn on the Locked on NHL podcast, where a rotating cast of hockey experts guide you through the week with a different theme show for every day. From big news Monday to recap Friday.
But we've got a couple of news items that are noteworthy in the NHL in the last week, one of which is below the NHL, and we'll bring that up first. So the AHL announced officially, this has been speculated for weeks and weeks, but the AHL...
Search Locked on NHL on TuneIn to listen.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to preview today's COVID-19 hearings and why states may not need lockdowns to prevent COVID spread. Plus, Nick Colas, co-founder of Data Trek Research, on corporate earnings and why the S&P may be stuck in neutral. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Stocks are up all. This amid a report that Donald Trump supports sending another round of checks to Americans and data that indicates American manufacturing is nearing expansion. Oil's up and so's the dollar. St. Louis Fed President Jim Bullard tells Bloomberg he sees no bubbles.
Bubbles is always an issue, and I do keep my eye on it. But again, I'm just not seeing things that are of the same magnitude as what happened in the late 1990s. the internet so-called .com bubble that blew up on us, and then the much more serious housing bubble in the mid-2000s that also blew up and turned into a global crisis. But I'm not seeing anything like that right now.
We check the markets every 15 minutes. The S&P's up 0.9%, up 27. The Dow's up 0.8%, up 202. And the Nasdaq's up 1%, up 100. The 10-year is down 2/32. The yield 0.71%. West Texas Intermediate crude continues to ascend. It's up 0.8% at 41.06 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.9% at 17.8280 an ounce. The dollar yen 106.19. The euro's $1.1341, and the British pound $1.2518. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It is 10:33 on Wall Street. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined now by Bloomberg Opinion columnist Max Neeson, who writes these days on COVID-19, and his latest: states don't need new lockdowns to cut COVID spread. It's a matter of steering people towards safer behaviour. Max, as we see the curve continuing to rise actually in the United States overall, obviously New York has passed the peak for now at least. Why would you suggest that new lockdowns wouldn't help?
Well, new lockdowns may still be necessary if case growth keeps accelerating, and if it gets to the point in specific that are of concern. You're thinking about Houston and Phoenix. There is a point where you have enough cases that you begin to threaten hospital capacity. Still may be needed, but there is still a chance that by doing more targeted mitigation, by making sure that businesses, bars, restaurants, all these new open places are actually abiding by, the smart distancing requirements, requiring people that wear masks. There's still a chance to turn things around before you get to the point where you need a lockdown. But what's pretty eminently clear is that these subset of states that are seeing aggressive case growth, they open too fast or too broadly, aren't taking these sort of common sense measures seriously enough. And in order for those kind of measures, anything short of a lockdown to work, you need to act early and aggressively. It's hard to get people to change behavior once they've already, gotten into a new mindset or set of activities. And the data that we're seeing right now in terms of cases and hospitalizations is from infections that happened, a week ago before you had this sort of heightened level of concern. So in all likelihood, they'll just keep going up, which means that the need to act, if you want to avoid further lockdowns, is quite urgent and it needs to be, targeted, but also pretty aggressive, I think.
So, Max, one of the arguments from, I think, the governors of Texas and Florida was, hey, we're not having a bigger issue here. We're just testing more, and therefore that's why the numbers are going up. Is that a valid rationale for the new data?
It's not. It's pretty clear from other data that this is the case. The two things that point you in that direction. First, are that the test positive rate, the number of an expanded rate of tests that are coming in positive, that has been going up substantially and consistently, which is a really good indicator that there's community spread that's not being caught. So it's very clearly not just artifact testing. The other one is hospitalizations, which are ticking up, especially in Texas and Arizona, a little bit less clear in Florida because they don't share daily data on current hospitalizations. But the fact that people are going to the hospital indicates that there is this severe level of spread that needs to be checked, and it absolutely can't be explained only by testing.
The other thing that is a little bit dangerous, particularly when it comes to states that aren't reporting daily hospitalizations, is that it seems to be younger skewing it now. So we're getting, an average in, say, Florida of the 37 years old, for example, whereas it had been in the 60s. And that'll result in fewer deaths in the near term, which is fantastic. But you do need to keep track of the amount of hospitalizations and who has been sick in order to be able to fully know how this virus is mutating, right?
So that, there's good and bad when it comes to a younger skewing outbreak. On one hand, the virus does tend to be much less dangerous in that population. But if you have unchecked spread, if you have large enough numbers, first of all, it gets harder to protect that older population over time. And secondly, as you mentioned, we're still learning about the long-term effects of being infected. You hear about people coming in even with mild infections and still showing, pretty bad lung scans and potential other effects. And and then even though the rate of severe infection or complications is lower in younger people, it's certainly not zero, and the rate rises significantly before you get the rate of complications before you even get to that older population that's most at risk. So I'm using that as an excuse to not take action. Frankly, doesn't hold a lot of water with me.
All right, so Max, today we have some folks coming in front of Congress, Dr. Anthony Fauci, leaders of the CDC, the FDA. What do you expect to hear at this hearing?
I think it'll touch on all of the sort of big issues, the dual, forward and backward looking. What went wrong pretty clearly, quite a lot, and then what can be done going forward to kind of mitigate the impact of COVID over the long run. That being, both near-term actions in states that are seeing renewed outbreaks, things you can do heading into the fall when you have greater risk from more economic activity coinciding flu season, and then the longer-term type stuff like the efforts to accelerate the development of vaccines and treatments. And, the sort of specific controversies of the day, President Trump calling testing a double-edged sword when it pretty clearly is one of the best and most available tools we have to kind of combat the further spread of the virus and finding out who's infected and making sure they take the right steps to prevent infecting others. So it'll be, running through all of that, I think.
Interesting. We'll pay attention to that later on today. Max Neeson, biotech, pharma, and healthcare columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. We always love hearing from Max, particularly during this time of the pandemic, to get his thoughts on what is going on in Washington, what is going on the healthcare front, what is going on in the biotech front as we think about treatments and potentially vaccines for this pandemic. Again, as Max was suggesting, we are seeing some spikes in certain states, and that is certainly worrisome as we think about the national fight against the pandemic. Right now, let's head down to Washington, D.C. for world and national headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan, what do you have for us?
Well, Paul, after a half-full rally in Tulsa over the weekend, President Trump is headed to the battleground state of Arizona today. And just before he boarded a noisy Marine One at the White House, the president said he'll be focused on immigration.
We have over 200 miles of wall built. It's been incredible. Our numbers on the border, as you know, are just about a record-breaking low.
The president also says he'll have an executive order soon on historic monuments. That's after he threatened on Twitter to throw demonstrators in prison for up to 10 years if they vandalize statues. The president also indicated he wasn't joking when he told the Tulsa crowd last weekend that he had asked to slow down coronavirus testing. Latest figures show up to 31 states have R0 figures above 1. That means every person infected with the coronavirus in those states is passing it on to at least one other person. There will be funeral services today for the black man who was shot and killed by police in Atlanta nearly 2 weeks ago. The historic Ebenezer Baptist Church is expected to be packed with mourners for Rashard Brooks. Hundreds filed past his gold-colored casket yesterday at the public viewing at the church, once led by Martin Luther King Jr. Today's service is invitation only, but it's going to be streamed on the church website. Senate Democrats are indicating they will block a Republican-led police reform bill ahead of a test vote on it tomorrow. In a letter to Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Democrats say the bill is not salvageable, and they're demanding bipartisan talks. Republican Senator Tim Scott's bill encourages limits on police chokeholds and dashboard and body camera use, but it doesn't address qualified immunity for police officers. Global news on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm
Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/C's change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
COVID-19.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Tuesday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
I was offered one. Were you?
Yeah, I was offered one too.
1 2 1 2. I was offered one.
I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
The Mini Electric was raring to go. Until, ready, set, stop. We hit the power down switch. We waited. But now, it's time to start up again. We're ready with the Mini Electric and whole Mini range online. Showroom safety measures are set, and we're feeling good to go. Find your perfect Mini at mini.co.uk.
You always say the best thing you ever did was join up. I bet you don't get the same experiences in Civvy Street. Remember those amazing deployments we had? And that feeling of pride. We'd love to have you back. Go on. Feel the pride again. Search RAF Rejoin Us.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Wondering what to play next? Want to know what other TuneIn listeners are listening to right now? Head to the trending section under Browse to explore the most popular stations and podcasts on TuneIn today. Millions of listeners like you can't be wrong.
Ready for some straight talk on what's happening in the MLB? On the Barstool Sports Podcast starting 9, Dallas Braden and Jared Carrabis cut through the BS to break down the league the way they really see it.
Yeah, we're continuing our little mini-series of college baseball coaches in addition to bringing you major league players from throughout the league. If you've been listening to Starting 9 for some time now, you know that we've had a big leaguer on every single episode for probably 2 years now.
Search Starting 9 on TuneIn to listen.
Stay close to College Hoops Conversation with College Basketball Talk Podcast from NBC Sports. Join Rob Dowster and Bobby Reagan for weekly recaps of what's happening in every conference. Nostalgic flashbacks to classic games. and big picture discussions of the future of the sport.
Always knew was a legend, and you always knew was one of the great coaches because everyone always told you how great this coach was. But he never really reached point of either.
Search College Basketball Talk on TuneIn to listen.
This is Mike Golick from ESPN's Golick and Wingo. Every morning, Trey Wingo, my son, and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golick and Wingo to start listening today.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Off earlier highs, the S&P still has pushed to a two-week high, with investors continuing to focus on signs the economy is bouncing back from a shutdown. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P is up 0.6%, up 18. The Dow is up 0.4%, up 109, and the Nasdaq is up 0.8%, up 83. The 10-year is down 1/32. The yield is 0.71%. West Texas Intermediate crude's up 0.2% at $40.80 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 1% at $17.8370 an ounce. The dollar yen 106.10. The euro $1.1334, and the British pound $1.2511. New home sales in the U.S. are up more than expected for the month of May, with record low mortgage rates pulling buyers back into a housing market that froze up during the pandemic. Purchases of single-family houses climbed 16.6% to a 676,000 annualized pace. Bloomberg Markets continues, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jones.
You're listening to Markets with Vonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
DataCheck Research produces a morning note that is always thought-provoking. 5 days a week is something just sparks the thought process when you take a look at the email. And in recent days, the co-founder, Nick Colas, has been looking at everything from yield curve control to the impact of the upcoming elections on stocks and on markets, and how this do-nothing market is just a little bit baffling, and some ideas for what to do in this do-nothing market. Let's bring him in now. Nick Colas, co-founder of DataCheck Research. Nick, let's start with yield curve control, only because you pointed out today the New York Fed blog out, which explains why yield curve control is more efficient than quantitative easing. And at the same time, in a different region, the St. Louis Fed President Jim Bullard is saying, no, we're not going to have yield curve control. It's unnecessary.
Yes, it was fascinating to see the New York Fed actually put out a blog analyzing the Japanese experience with yield curve control, and pointed out very clearly that yield curve control has the advantage of not requiring as much capital from a central bank to execute a given rate target for, say, the long end of the curve. So instead of spending tens and tens of billions of dollars to hold rates at a certain level, simply telling the market we're going to peg it at X means you have to spend much less money to make it stay at X. So it's fascinating to see the New York Fed saying there is some merit to yield curve control in terms of efficiency in central bank balance sheets.
Hey, Nick, so when you think about this market here, are you concerned about what I'm going to term the lack of a breadth, if you will, in this market? This 40% move off the bottom, it's, centered on a handful of names, the Amazons and the Apples of the world. How much of a concern is that for you?
Yeah, it's a fascinating point. If you look at the 2009 rally, for example, which there are many analogs to the current rally in that one, the 2009 rally was all about the banks. The banks doubled in value from March 9th, 2009 through the next 60 days, 90 days rather, basically the same day as today. So it was led by banks, even more than this rally has been led by tech. So it does feel that big snapback rallies off the bottom are always led by something. In 2009, it was banks for all the obvious reasons. This time around, it's been tech because of all the stay-at-home, work-at-home phenomena that we're seeing still play out to this day, and that seems to have caught investors' attention. So I'd say, as unusual as it is, it does fit a paradigm for snapback rallies like 2009 and 2020.
Nick, Robinhood has been a huge source of interest to so many people all over the country in the recent days and weeks. A retail platform for retail traders. How much of an impact are these people that maybe have an average account size that you say less than $5,000? How much of an impact are they really having on the market?
As a market impact, I'd say not that much. They do get a lot of press because of things like Hertz and the USO ETF before that. And so they are making some rookie mistakes because that's what rookies do, and that's fine. But as you said, the account balances are relatively small. Robinhood doesn't even have an IRA product. This is all kind of discretionary retail money, taxable money, people putting in a couple of $1,000s to play the market while sports betting is closed. So I think it's interesting, but I don't think it's had a big effect in terms of money flows. But I tell you, having looked at markets for 30 years, it is fascinating to see, a couple of million people decide they want to trade stocks in the course of 90 days, because that hasn't happened in 20 years. So it's interesting to see, but from a money flow perspective, not all that relevant.
Well, Nick, you are no rookie. As you say, 30 years, you're a grizzled veteran here. So you've been through a lot of presidential elections here, and somebody told me that 2020 is an election year. How are you and nobody's really focusing on it right now because obviously there's bigger issues, more immediate issues for folks and investors. How are you thinking about the presidential election coming up here in the fall?
The way we're thinking about it is not just the presidential election, but the congressional ones as well. And we did some work for clients last night that looked at, so back to 1945, how does the market do when one party controls both the White House and Congress, both chambers? It's only happened in 30 years over the last 75, so less than half the time. But when it does happen, if Republicans hold both White House and Congress, the S&P is up an average of 16%. And when Democrats hold both houses, both chambers and the White House, it's up 14.3% on average. And the drawdowns are never really bad. Those are both better than the average S&P return since World War II, which is 11%. So the really important thing is either party, somebody has to own the economy, own the problems, and find the solutions. And as long as that happens, markets tend to do okay. So we're not as worried or focused on whether it's Mr. Trump or Mr. Biden as much as someone's got to own it. Because particularly in 2021, the economy is still going to need a lot of help. And if one party owns it, one party has to fix it.
Yeah, we actually heard Bill Ackman say that yesterday as well, that he's not making any, predictions or any trades based on who might be the next president. And at the same time, Nick, we're going to have such different policies under a Joe Biden than under a second-term President Trump, right?
Absolutely. The biggest worry, I think, for markets is, corporate taxes obviously came down in 2017, will almost certainly go back up if Democrats control both chambers and the White House. But we might also see continuations of fiscal stimulus programs into 2021 if unemployment continues to be high. And if one party owns the economy next year, they will have to figure out a way to make growth happen, even if it means more fiscal stimulus. So to me, it's twixt and tween between the two problems. Yes, probably higher corporate taxes, but if we can reach escape velocity and achieve a better economy through fiscal stimulus, that's a positive. So I think it balances out.
So, Nick, it seems like I'm just looking at a chart just on, and it's showing kind of the COVID cases in the U.S. and it's recently it's kind of turned the other way, the wrong way here. Yet the market seems to be kind of discounting that so much. Whereas if we'd seen the spike up in big states like Texas or Florida, we'd see I think a pretty negative reaction. The market's back in February and early March and early April. What is your sense of kind of how the market's thinking about the virus per se?
Yeah, very, very important point. I think two things. The first is this is why tech is still rallying. Tech was the play off the bottom because of work at home and all the other things we know, and tech continues to lead. That's one way of knowing that the market is saying we're not going to play the classic rebound trades. We're playing tech because those things work regardless of what happens with the virus and infection rates and how states manage lockdowns and so forth. The second point I think the market is saying is America is basically going to try to power through this. Infection rates are going up, but it seems to be among younger people with at least historically lower mortality rates. And so this will be a problem, but it won't be the existential problem that it was when we locked down the entire country for the better part of a month. So the market is saying profits are going to recover, but we still want to be in the more defensive names for this environment, which is tech, and tech leads the market higher.
Hey, Nick, thanks so much for joining us once again. As always, we learn a thing or two when we talk with you. Nick Colas, co-founder, Data Trek Research. I recommend you read his stuff. It's just really, really insightful, really gives you some food for thought as we think about navigating these markets here in these uncertain times here. So we still have green on the screen. We have the S&P up 0.6%, the Dow up 130 points right now. This is Bloomberg.
Sometimes. Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
I was offered one.
I was offered one. Were you?
Yeah, I was offered one too.
1212. I was offered one.
I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
We're pleased to be reopening drive-through lanes and McDelivery. But helping keep you and our team safe is our priority, so we have fewer people working. And to make social distancing easier, we've installed screens in kitchens and service areas. Before reopening, all our restaurants will be deep cleaned, and we'll be cleaning equipment and surfaces even more often. For now, we're open for reduced hours and serving a reduced menu. And to keep everyone moving quickly and safely, please use contactless payment. With smaller teams, service will take longer than usual, so thank you for your patience. To see if your local McDonald's is open, visit mcdonalds.co.uk. McDelivery at participating restaurants only.
Trey Wingo here from ESPN's Golic and Wingo. Every morning, Mike Golic Jr. and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golic and Wingo to start listening today.
The world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney.
The Fed action, essentially unlimited quantitative easing.
Companies taking aim at coronavirus vaccines and other treatments.
This could be a lower for longer hit.
Market sell-off glowing global once again.
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
It's possible that this is going to be a scarring recession. The Fed is really showing that they're doing whatever it takes.
A lot of people don't expect that the economy will reopen in full.
This is really hitting industrial America, and it's a major crisis.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, Larry Fink, Chairman and CEO of BlackRock. He speaks with Bloomberg's Francine Lacroix at BlackRock Sustainability Summit. We'll have that for you in just moments. Plus, we're going to get the latest on the China trade deal and whether more tariffs are in the works. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett at Bloomberg News and get a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg, what do you have?
Well, stocks are well off earlier highs. We were above 200 for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Now we're down about 125. We check those markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P is still up 0.6%, up 19. The Dow's up 0.5%, up 121. And the Nasdaq's up 0.9%, up 87. The 10 years down 230 seconds. The yield 0.71%. West Texas Intermediate crude's up 0.6% at $41 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.8% at $17.8160 an ounce. The dollar yen, $106.24. The euro, $1.13.33. And the British pound, $1.25.23. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Greg, thank you. Well, the Russell 2000 index is higher, but it's erasing much of its gain now, about a third of 1%. Just a couple of sectors in there are lower. Let's bring in somebody who knows a lot more about what's happening in today's trade, and that is Dave Wilson. Dave, what's going on?
Yeah, exactly, Vonnie, with that 0.3% gain, the Russell 2000 trailing the S&P 500, which is up about 0.6%. That said, one of the Russell's biggest gains belongs to Translate Bio, whose ticker is TBIO. The vaccine developer has soared 37% on an agreement with Francis Sanofi that covers shots for COVID-19 and the flu. The expanded deal is worth as much as $2.3 billion. Plug Power, ticker Plug, PLUG, is up 25%. The maker of hydrogen fuel cells and engines completed deals to buy 2 hydrogen suppliers and raise 2024 financial targets to reflect those deals. Inovio Pharmaceuticals, ticker INO, is up 15.5%. The drug developer won a $71 million Pentagon contract for devices that deliver an experimental COVID-19 vaccine. Now, biggest drop in the Russell, Hertz Global Holdings, ticker HTZ, down 17%. The bankrupt rental car company is lower for a fourth day after a plan to sell $500 million in stock collapsed. And Melendo Therapeutics, ticker MLND, is down almost 14%. The drug developer said it would stop working on a proposed hormone treatment based on results of a second-stage study.
Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, we appreciate that look at small and mid-cap stocks. So exactly what is the world's second largest asset manager's reaction to the global pandemic? Earlier today, BlackRock chairman and CEO Larry Fink spoke with Bloomberg's Francine Lacroix at the BlackRock Sustainability Summit. He discussed the return to work, how governments need to navigate compassion with pragmatism, and then how difficult it will be to get back on our feet. Let's take a listen.
I believe it's just going to take quite a long time for us to get fully back to, let's say, the 2019 levels. We still have not witnessed the full impact on small and medium businesses. On the other hand, we've seen large corporations having full access to the capital markets, and we've had a profound change from the depth of the third week of March, where most companies have had the ability to access liquidity and capital. Even this week, American Airlines is. Back in March, we were questioning the viability of some airlines. And so large corporations had a great ability to stabilize their financial position. And now the question is, how fast can all industries reboot itself to more of a normal business model? I do believe Americans and throughout the world, people want to find some source of normalcy. And that normalcy is, everybody wants, and we have some governmental leaders focusing on those issues. And the real debate will be, can we have a society that becomes a society that was highly compassionate to a society that is more pragmatic? And right now, the marketplace is looking at a more pragmatic society. It is accepting a higher infection rate, which then will lead to some higher mortality. And that's going to be a balance. How much can society bear the rise of infection rates, which in many cases may be good because we have a higher percent of our population that maybe have the antibodies. And so that's going to be the real issue. And if we can have a more normalized economy sooner, then I think the marketplace is validated by its prices. Now, on the other hand, if we see rising infection rates in the coming weeks or months, and we have to go backwards again, and we have to find a way to become more compassionate, then the markets are probably ahead of themselves. And so these are going to be the real questions about where we are related to the rate of disease and the need for normalcy. And I think these are very hard questions. I was actually asked by a leading politician, a governmental leader, and asked the question, what should they do? Should they be more pragmatic or more compassionate? And these are very hard questions, harder questions for democracies than they are for autocratic countries. And so we'll see how this plays out. It may play out very well in one country and it may play out poorly in another country. But I don't think we have enough information to know. At the same time, we have the science related to antivirals, the science towards some form of vaccination, and that will lead to more normalcy the faster we have those types of protocols.
You know, Larry, we talk about a V-shaped recovery. We talk about W-shaped recovery. Is it, because we're just testing and going along to see if the infection rates go up, how do you think that recovery will look like? Is it going to be very patchy, or because we fell so hard, it'll be quicker to go up?
I think some industries are going to be quicker to come up. I think some industries are going to be slower to come up. I've been to different. I was in Colorado this past weekend, and they opened up more. But and opening up means only maybe, let's say at a restaurant, they could only eat outside. These owners of restaurants are still not making a living. They may be breaking even. They may be able to help their employees make some living. But that does not give them the, obviously normalcy yet. And so this is what I'm trying to suggest. We don't know the real impact on small and medium businesses yet. We don't, is there going to be a need for another fiscal stimulus to help these, the large component of small and medium businesses? As I said, large companies, in many cases, have already been able to stabilize their financial position. So I don't know how this is all going to play out. And I'm optimistic, though, that we are going to find antivirals. I'm optimistic we'll find some form of vaccination. Is it in 6 months or a year or 2 years? I can't answer that.
Well, that was Larry Fink there, and obviously we all know him as one of the most important players in the market, given that he runs BlackRock, which basically owns several percentage points of every single S&P 500 company out there, right? Right, Paul?
Yeah. Absolutely. So it's interesting to get his thoughts here. And so, I think a cautious optimism is kind of what I took away from some of his comments with Francine Lacroix, expecting the economy to come back. But I think probably gradually is probably kind of what I took away from Mr. Fink's comments.
Yeah, not really committing to a V-shaped recovery, or at least a narrow V-shaped recovery. Some other comments that we didn't get in that particular piece but are out there. He doesn't expect all employees to ever return to the office. He thinks that that would take a long time, and that some just never will. And also, just on social justice, he has made a firm commitment now, a promise to employ 30% more black employees at BlackRock by 2024. So at least he's putting down some metrics that he will have to live up to, and the company will have to live up to, and hopefully that will set an example to other companies as well out there.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very interesting. When BlackRock speaks, people tend to listen.
Yeah, exactly. So that is Larry Fink, and you can get the rest of that interview on your Bloomberg or at Bloomberg.com. Do tune in. It's important to know what these leaders are saying as well. Right, let's get some world and national news now. We'll head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. and Nathan Hager.
All right, Bonnie, thank you. Senate Democrats plan to block the police reform bill put forward by Republican Tim Scott in the wake of George Floyd's death. In a Senate floor speech this morning, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer called the bill deeply, fundamentally, and irrevocably flawed. Said it is clear will not get the 60 votes it needs in a test vote tomorrow. Both parties are under significant pressure to act after the wave of protests over the last few weeks. President Trump is threatening to act against protesters who have turned their attention to controversial monuments.
These are not protesters, by the way. These are anarchists and other things. If these hoodlums come around, and if the states can't handle it, we are ready, willing, and able to help.
The president spoke to reporters outside the White House ahead of a trip to Arizona this afternoon. He says he's going to have an executive order ready soon on monuments after announcing on Twitter this morning that he's ordered the arrest of demonstrators who try to vandalize or destroy monuments on federal property. This is a primary election day in Virginia, New York, and Kentucky, where Democratic voters are choosing a challenger to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell this fall. State officials are expecting higher turnout than usual, in part because of a late surge from state lawmaker Charles Booker, who's challenging former Marine fighter pilot Amy McGrath in the Senate primary race. It is also another test of mostly mail-in balloting in the midst of the pandemic. The Washington Post reports in-person voting appears to be going smoothly in the single polling places that have been set up today in Kentucky's two largest cities, Louisville and Lexington. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
You may not be getting on planes yet.
At what point do we start to see this elusive V-shaped recovery?
But for detailed, up-to-the-minute news of Asia, you don't have to.
Do you think that the tension has the possibility to destabilize Asian assets?
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
Do you expect some of these companies that come and list here to then delist in New York?
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg Terminal is your power up, connecting you to real-time financial data, market-moving news, powerful analytics, and an influential network of financial decision makers around the world. Share ideas, negotiate trades, and gain the insight you need to make more informed decisions. See how the Terminal can take your workflow to the next level at Bloomberg.com/professional.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
How long?
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath? Or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway? Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage? Yeah, that moment feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. We can replace your battery at over 700 stores and garages, or even at your home or work with our mobile experts, so you can enjoy an engine that starts first time, every time, and start enjoying the open road again.
Are we nearly there yet?
From battery replacements to tyre fittings to MOTs, there really is no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
At Honda, we've never looked to other car companies for inspiration. No, it's not a matter of an inflated ego. We just prefer listening to what people really need. For example, the new Honda Jazz Hybrid doesn't have the expected 6 airbags. It has 10, including one that prevents the driver and passenger from colliding with each other. And because we also listen to our conscience, all our safety features come as standard. No charge. Honda, the power of dreams.
When you buy tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to a machine? Or to someone called Mac, or Sean, or Luth, or Ange, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hi, it's Ali. What are you searching for?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
There's a reason flash storage is called flash storage and not electronic non-volatile computer memory storage. From quick and efficient data retrieval to instant scalability, everything about IBM flash storage is fast. It's also cloud-ready and surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £310 for 24 terabytes of all flash. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Find out more at ibm.biz/flash offer.
You always say the best thing you ever did was join up. I bet you don't get the same experiences in Civvy Street. Remember those incredible family adventures? And and that feeling of being part of something special. We'd love to have you back. Go on, feel the pride again. Search RAF Rejoin Us.
We've got a lot of catching up to do.
Hi there, everybody. Lovely to be with you again.
Over 100 live games in just 6 weeks on Sky Sports. With 64 Premier League and 45 EFL Championship games, everything is still to play for. Scores to sell, relegation to avoid, Europe up for grabs, and the titles to win. Upgrade to Sky Sports today. Requires Sky Sports Premier League and football packs. See sky.com/sports for details.
Wondering what to play next? Want to know what other TuneIn listeners are listening to right now? Head to the trending section under Browse to explore the most popular stations and podcasts on TuneIn today. Millions of listeners like you can't be wrong.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are up amid a report that President Donald Trump is supporting sending another round of checks to Americans, and data that showed American manufacturing is nearing expansion. Oil's up and the dollar is down. We look at those numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day. The S&P is now up 0.9% up 27. The Dow is up 0.75% up 194, and the Nasdaq is up 1.2% up 117. The 10-year is down 4/30 seconds. The yield is 0.72%. West Texas Intermediate crude is up 1.2% at 41.21 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 0.9% at 17.8280 an ounce. The dollar yen stands at 106.26. The euro's at $1.1335, and the British pound $1.2528. 13 U.S. companies sought bankruptcy protection last week. Bloomberg data show that matches the peak of the global financial crisis. The filings led by Consumer and Energy were the most for any week since May of 2009. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Paul Sweeney and Bonnie Quinn on Bloomberg Radio.
Paul Sweeney, remember when trade headlines used to equip the markets?
Yes, exactly right.
Well, we had a little reminder of that yesterday and into this morning when Peter Navarro, the White House advisor, who, of course, has been appointed to help the president on U.S. trade with China, sowed confusion in a Fox interview. He said basically that the U.S.-China trade agreement was over. Well, you might think that that would have snuck by markets, but no, we got a big change in markets, and U.S. President Donald Trump actually had to come out and clarify and say, no, actually the deal with China is fully intact. For more on what went on behind the scenes and what we should expect trade-wise over the next 6 months, let's bring in Bloomberg trade czar Brendan Murray joining us from London. Brendan, what was this all about? Was Peter Navarro trying to sow some mischief with the Chinese?
Well, he sounded like, in an answer to a question on a TV interview, that the China-U.S. trade deal, this Phase 1 deal that they signed in January, was over. And so that obviously is underpinning a lot of agricultural purchases and other things that the Trump administration negotiated and they put the American companies under a lot of stress with tariffs over the past few years. So the news or the apparent news that deal had come undone, was really what spooked investors. Now, it turns out that President Trump tweeted just a little while later that the deal was still intact. That Peter Navarro, who wrote a book called "Death by China," incidentally, was misunderstood. So he's obviously one of the most hawkish members of the Trump economic team on China. So it's no surprising that he thinks that the trust is gone, but it's definitely, it goes to show you that markets are kind of on edge, and if that trade deal disintegrates, then we might see even more selling.
So, Brendan, what is the status of the Phase 1 deal? I've read some reports where maybe China's only bought maybe 25% or so of what they were committed to in terms of agricultural products and other products. Where are we with Phase 1?
So the person to listen to on Phase 1 is Robert Lighthizer, the U.S. Trade Representative. It's the deal he negotiated. he seems to be the point person on it, not Navarro. So if you listen to Lighthizer, he thinks that basically China, and he testified in Congress last week, that China really didn't get started buying, the agricultural commodities that they promised to until maybe March or April, kind of once they got through the worst of the coronavirus outbreak there. So he sounds a bit sympathetic, and is giving them the benefit of the doubt, and and has seen some purchases in recent weeks. Whether that continues is anybody's guess, but Lighthizer, for his part at least, seems to be still confident that that purchases are going to pick up in the second half of the year, and China will keep those commitments.
Well, and there was always the question mark over whether China could actually fulfill all the purchases that it had promised. But separately from that, Brendan, was there any impact on the deal from the John Bolton allegations that the president sort of asked China to, it's not something we didn't know or didn't suspect, but sort of very black and white, the idea that the National Security Advisor was saying that President Trump straight out asked China to buy agricultural goods in states where he might be, on the balance between getting reelected and not reelected. Will that have any impact on the talks?
It doesn't seem to have had an impact on the actual deal that they signed itself, but it just throws the whole relationship into more turmoil. And if you doubted whether there were political motivations behind that deal that Trump was pushing, you might think twice now. But it's definitely added a layer of intrigue and a lot to talk about in Washington at least.
So, Brendan, you say Robert Lighthizer is one of the folks in Washington we should be listening to, and he recently said, and Bloomberg News was reporting, that tariffs, maybe even higher tariffs on medical supplies and PPE would be a good thing. I'm just not sure how that would be, to the extent we are seeing some spikes in cases, and we may have kind of another wave of the virus in the fall. What do you think his logic is there?
Well, his logic is that if we put tariffs on imports, then producers will have an incentive to make them domestically. So his tariffs drive the return of manufacturing jobs to the U.S. in Ambassador Lighthizer's world, and that's debatable, obviously, but it gives you a sense of all that we've been through, 2 years of a trade war with China, $370 billion worth of tariffs, of products that have tariffs on them, that he still finds, and some problems with the medical supplies, the personal protective equipment coming to the U.S. during the worst of the pandemic, that tariffs still are the answer for him, and it could give you a sense too of where we might be headed with Europe and the trade relationship that's not getting better either, sets us up for an interesting second half of the year.
Brendan Murray with the understatement of the day, perhaps. Brendan Murray, trade czar for Bloomberg News. We always appreciate getting your perspective on trade. And as Vonnie, as you mentioned, it's kind of a topic we haven't spent too much time on over the past couple months as we've been dealing with the pandemic. But as you suggested earlier, Vonnie, that it is still right front and center for the markets here, because it really impacts the economic trajectory of not only the United States but also our trading partners around the world. So it bears watching, and folks like Brendan Murray help us do that. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Money Minute. The S&P 500 pushing to a two-week high, with investors continuing to focus on signs the American economy is bouncing back from the shutdown. Investors remain on edge over tensions with China. After a wild overnight session that saw futures plunge after White House advisor Peter Navarro said the trade deal was over. New home sales rose more than expected in May, with record low mortgage rates pulling buyers back into the housing market. Purchases of single-family houses climbed 16.6%. Restaurants had their strongest day in months this past Sunday, as Father's Day attracted a new wave of in-house diners. Seated diners were down 41% from a year earlier, compared with a 59% drop just one day earlier. At a time of coronavirus lockdowns, consumers are increasingly looking online for pre-owned garments. The digital resale market is poised to grow 27% this year to about $9 billion. That's according to secondhand apparel company ThredUp. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
With COVID-19, so much is unknown.
Is this the worst you've seen?
But we are committed to getting you every piece of information we can as soon as we can.
Tell us about this first big win you have. What is it, 24 million N95 masks?
Fewer unknowns.
Who's winning here? Where is the pressure right now?
That's our goal.
What worries you the most? The time it's going to take for a vaccine?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Bloomberg.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is £34 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Tuesday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath? Or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway? Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage? Yeah, that moment. Feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK. This is a message from the government. Some businesses are now able to welcome back their employees and customers. To keep everyone safe, it's important you follow government guidance and make your workplace COVID secure. Businesses should carry out COVID-19 risk assessments, put in place hygiene procedures, and help staff and customers keep a safe distance. Talk to your employees, listen to their concerns, and if possible, help them to work from home. Every workplace is different, but by following this guidance, you can get back to business safely and play your part in managing the risk of infection. Visit gov.uk/working safely for more information. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
The Mini Electric was raring to go until ready, set, stop. We hit the power down switch. We waited. But now, it's time to start up again. We're ready with the Mini Electric and whole Mini range online. Showroom safety measures are set, and we're feeling good to go. Find your perfect Mini at mini.co.uk.
There's a reason flash storage is called flash storage and not electronic non-volatile computer memory storage. From quick and efficient data retrieval to instant scalability, everything about IBM flash storage is fast. It's also cloud-ready and surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £310 for 24 terabytes of all flash. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Find out more at ibm.biz/flash offer.
We're all in uncharted territory looking for ways to support our communities. At Dell Technologies, we're making sure small businesses have the right tech solutions. Dell Technologies advisors are here for you, helping small businesses stay connected and productive while working remotely with Windows 10 Pro and Microsoft Teams. We're standing by you every step of the way. Call us today on 0800 169 1745. That's 0800 169 1745.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Over the last few weeks, up to 1776 right now. With that, and of course all the talk of commodities, we'll be speaking with Will Rind, CEO of Granite Shares. We'll also get the latest from the Apple WWDC event from David Garrity of Laidlaw and Company. First, let's get a Bloomberg Business Flash now with Greg Jarrett.
As you indicated, Vonnie, stocks are up. Investors are cheering. Indicators showing manufacturing and services sectors around the world have started to recover as lockdowns ease. St. Louis Fed President Jim Bullard tells Bloomberg that he, for one, is optimistic.
I think the third quarter will be a transition quarter. Like I said, I think most businesses will get back up and running and actually be close to the kind of production that they had previous to the pandemic. And then a few businesses will struggle more than that. But so far, so good. I actually think we're doing all right given the nature and size of this shock.
Investors seem to concur. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day. S&P's up over 1%, up 32. The Dow's up 0.9%, up 240, and the Nasdaq's up 1.3%, up 131. The 10-year's down 5/30 seconds, the yield 0.72%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 1.3% at 41.26 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.9% at 17.82 even per ounce. The dollar yen 106.45. The euro's $1.13.24, and the British pound $1.25.24. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Paul Sweeney and Vonnie Quinn on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, I'm looking at a year-to-date chart for gold, and what a chart it is. We got gold up about 16% year-to-date. To get a sense of what's driving gold's performance as well as all other commodities, welcome Will Rind. He's a founder and CEO of Granite Shares. They have about $1 billion of assets under management as of May this year. Will, thanks so much for joining us here. Let's start with gold here. Give us your call on gold. What's been driving this commodity and kind of how you think it's going to play out going forward?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me on today. So in terms of gold, this is now, we just made a new high in terms of the price. There's the highest price now for gold since 2012 levels. And really the main sort of factor driving gold is, in some respects, a similar factor to what's driving the stock market, which is stimulus, albeit it's reflected in gold in a slightly different way in that people are nervous about the amount of stimulus being injected into the economy because they feel that does really two things ultimately, that it debases the currency, and the currency being the US dollar. So by weakening the dollar, increases the relative attractiveness for gold. And also that this money printing might end up leading to inflation. And obviously inflation is something that investors want to protect against. So I think those are two kind of drivers really at the moment.
It's fascinating because, risk assets are risk on right now. I mean, we're seeing equities move higher. We're not seeing much movement in fixed income because obviously, the Fed is in there. So what is behind the thinking here? I mean, surely if equities are moving higher, people would normally be selling gold?
I think in a normalized environment, then I'd probably agree with you, Bonnie, but this is anything but a normalized environment. This is the exact opposite of that. This is a stimulus-driven equity market, and the playbook for a stimulus-driven equity market is to buy stocks. That's what we learned after the financial crisis, and this shock is just a magnitude larger than what we saw in the great financial crisis of 2008. And so investors are rightly coming back into the market and buying stocks as the Fed, the central bank here in the U.S. and central banks around the world support asset prices. But gold is the counterbalance to that, because what gold investors are thinking is that with interest rates at zero and potentially going negative, they want some protection in the portfolio against a policy that might end up being an error, and that is leading to inflation or debasement of the underlying currency.
Just want to get a couple of headlines crossing the Bloomberg terminal right now. Strong earthquake hitting Mexico City, 7.1 magnitude earthquake just hitting the Bloomberg terminal right now. We'll have more news on that going forward. So it's interesting here, Will, as we think about commodities. I also want to talk a little bit about oil. We had that tremendous volatility, several months ago, but since then, WTI here above $40 has been rallying here. What's kind of your call on the supply and demand dynamics of crude oil?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And so to put that in context, where we are today, although oil prices obviously have had a significant rally, I mean, you talk about a V-shaped recovery. It's one of the sharpest Vs you'll ever see if you look at a chart of oil prices over the last few months. And so we had we've gone from the depths of despair where, oil briefly went negative to rebounding pretty strongly. So in terms of the price right now, we're about the same level we were at the beginning of March. But to put that into context, $40 oil is still pretty low compared to where we were at the beginning of the year, where we were talking, $60 oil. So I think as the economy starts to recover, one of the first things people are going to do is they get in their cars and they're going to drive. I don't think that people are going to jump on airlines in the same way they would have done in the past. And so the first step as people come out of lockdown, I think, is more, we talked about, domestic vacations. And so that's more driving, and that's going to lead to more demand for oil. So I think oil prices can go higher from here. And certainly we're looking at a supply environment where, particularly in the U.S. and Canada, oil and gas drillers have cut the number of rigs that they're operating to record lows, indeed lows that we haven't seen, since just after the financial crisis in 2009.
Briefly, Will, where are the flows going? Granite Shares has 5 ETFs from gold to, the commodity broad ETF strategy. Where are you seeing the most flows?
We're seeing the most flows in gold. So our gold ETF bar just actually went over $1 billion, actually yesterday, in fact. So we're seeing a lot of interest in gold. And I think, outside of gold, really there's two sort of major things that obviously people are coming back into the stock market. So broad market equities are seeing a bit. And also, like you said, risk assets. So broad commodities, our COMB ETF as a broad commodity basket, seeing some interest in that again as people look to play the recovery. So a bit of both.
Will, thanks for joining us today. That is Will Rind, founder and CEO of Granite Shares. Assets under management, they're about $1 billion. We appreciate your time. I do want to come back to this Mexico City earthquake, though, Paul, because it's a strong quake, and we're getting 2 readings now. A seismologist is talking about a preliminary reading of 7.1 on the scale, and then we also have another reading from EMSC of 7.4 magnitude. So that's really pretty strong. We did see a little bit of a reaction in Mexico stocks. Not huge, though. They're still higher, and neither did we see any reaction for the peso. It was stronger by about 0.4% versus the US dollar, and still is. This is Bloomberg.
Right now, let's head down to our Washington, D.C. studios for World National Headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan, what do you have for us?
Well, Paul, we'll continue watching the strong seismic activity south of the border. Meantime, in Washington, top Senate Democrats are saying the Republicans' police reform bill is not salvageable. They are demanding negotiations on a more bipartisan package. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is signaling Democrats intend to block the measure ahead of a test vote tomorrow. Democrats say it doesn't go far enough to meet the moment after weeks of protest over racism and policing. President Trump says he will issue an executive order soon to protect historic monuments. That's after he announced on Twitter this morning he's ordered the arrest of anyone who tries to vandalize statues on federal property. Demonstrators outside the White House last night tried to take down a statue of Andrew Jackson. The president is also indicating he was not joking when he told a rally in Tulsa last weekend that he'd asked to slow down coronavirus testing.
I don't kid. Let me just tell you, let me make it clear. We have got the greatest testing program anywhere in the world. We test better than anybody in the world. Our tests are the best in the world, and we have the most of them.
The president spoke before leaving the White House for a trip to Arizona today. The White House has said the president was speaking in jest. Right now, the Trump administration's top health experts are testifying before the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Dr. Anthony Fauci is expected to tell lawmakers he does not expect the coronavirus to let up this summer as infections continue to rise in warm weather states like Texas, Florida, and Arizona. Latest figures show COVID-19 is spreading to more than one person per infected patient in as many as 31 states. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Jenny Liss, Jewish communal leader and philanthropist, talks about why she chose the Jewish Communal Fund for her family's charitable giving.
For a lot of people, it would be the convenience factor. I don't have to track anything.
If charitable giving is an important part of your life, JCF can help you organize your philanthropy with our donor-advised fund. A fund can be established with a minimum tax-deductible contribution of $5,000. Make grants to your favorite charities, and JCF handles all the administration and reporting.
At the year end, our board awards community grants, from fees and endowment income to UJ's annual campaign. We also make gifts to specific organizations, the elderly, Holocaust survivors, the hungry. The fact that we come together as a community at the end of the year to build community, that's what makes us different.
Get better at giving back. To find out more about JCF's impact, visit jcfny.org and download the Giving Report. JCF, we have a gift for giving.
The market's in focus.
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying, all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is £34 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
It's not business as usual right now, but Square has tools to help your business adapt. Like Square Online Store. You can start selling online in a few easy steps with pickup, delivery, and shipping options. And if you are selling in person, you can take contactless payments with hardware like Square Reader and Square Terminal. You'll get your money the very next business day, so you can put it to work. All these Square tools work together, no matter where you're selling, and there's never hidden fees or long-term commitments. Find out how Square can help you get back to business by visiting square.com/UK. Square Up Europe Limited is regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority for the provision of payment services.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. Why not book an MOT to get you safely back on the road? With over 600,000 carried out every year at 350 garages, you can always count on our experts. And get back to visiting those you've missed the most. Hi, Mum. From a safe distance, of course. From MOTs to battery replacements and tyre fittings, there's no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
This is a message from the government. Some businesses are now able to welcome back their employees and customers. To keep everyone safe, it's important you follow government guidance and make your workplace COVID secure. Businesses should carry out COVID-19 risk assessments, put in place hygiene procedures, and help staff and customers keep a safe distance. Talk to your employees, listen to their concerns, and if possible, help them to work from home. Every workplace is different, but by following this guidance, you can get back to business safely and play your part in managing the risk of infection. Visit gov.uk/working safely for more information. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
From all of us at Thames Water, thank you for supporting our key workers. As the weather warms up, demand for our water is growing, so we need your help more than ever. From taking shorter showers to turning off your sprinklers, you can make every drop count, inside and outside your home, to keep taps flowing in your community. Just don't forget to keep washing your hands regularly in line with government advice. Be an H2O hero. Find out how at thameswater.co.uk/watersmart.
We're pleased to be reopening drive-through lanes and McDelivery. But helping keep you and our team safe is our priority, so we have fewer people working. And to make social distancing easier, we've installed screens in kitchens and service areas. Before reopening, all our restaurants will be deep cleaned, and we'll be cleaning equipment and surfaces even more often. For now, we're open for reduced hours and serving a reduced menu. And to keep everyone moving quickly and safely, please use contactless payment. With smaller teams, service will take longer than usual, so thank you for your patience. To see if your local McDonald's is open, visit mcdonalds.co.uk. McDelivery at participating restaurants only.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
The S&P has pushed itself to a 2-week high. Investors are focusing on signs the economy is bouncing back from the shutdown. But investors are still on edge over tension with China after a wild overnight session that saw futures plunge after a White House advisor indicated the trade deal was over. They rebounded after the president contradicted that statement. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes. The S&P's up 0.9%, up 30. The Dow's up 0.9%, up 225. And the Nasdaq's up 1.3%, up 129. The 10-year is down 3/30 seconds. The yield is 0.71%. West Texas Intermediate's up 0.9% at 41.11 a barrel, with COMEX Gold up 0.9% at 17.8260 an ounce. The dollar yen 106.46. The euro's $1.1324. The pound $1.2525. Performance Group jumped as much as 15% today after the food service distributor reported an improvement in sales trends as the economy reopens across the country. Weekly sales were down 10% as of June 20th, but that compares with declines of about 50% in the last week of March. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Vonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Bloomberg Markets is brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the 6th straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth number 1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit commonwealth.com to learn more. Well, we learned a lot about Apple's strategy yesterday from Tim Cook at the Worldwide Developers Conference, which took place virtually. It continues. Let's bring in somebody who knows all about Apple and who can tell us what exactly we need to be watching out for. David Garrity is Chief Market Strategist at Laidlaw and Company. So we got the big announcement yesterday, David, that Apple is going to replace chips with its own chips. So Intel no longer needed, Intel no longer inside, Apple inside these days. What else can we anticipate will emanate from the week that will be of useful interest to investors?
Yeah, no, certainly, Vonnie. What's been coming out of the conference, apart from the fact of their move away from Intel to their own designed chips, is the fact that with regards to chip designs, they're going to use ARM-designed chips as a platform across their entire range of hardware products, with the idea that this can not only provide benefits in terms of reduced power consumption, but also provide a standardized platform that their developers can write programs to across all of their products.
So, David, give us a sense. It seems like a kind of a big deal to me to moving away from, the tried and true chip maker that is Intel that they've used for many years to their own chip. Why are they doing it? Why are they doing it now? What's kind of the rationale?
Well, I mean, Apple certainly has gotten to a scale where it's possible for them to consider investments that they may not have done previously. Note, however, that, Apple historically has had a business in which they've been involved in designing semiconductors. Now, they'd had this in cooperation with IBM in terms of IBM was running the semiconductor fabrication plant where Apple designed chips were made. So this is not entirely a new business for Apple, and also speaks to the scale, and also arguably speaks to what their own intentions are for their technology that perhaps Intel was not able to support as readily.
Now, in terms of supporting its developer community, Tim Cook has been trying to do a good job, but the US and Europe is investigating Apple over sort of antitrust allegations, how much it takes from developers in the App Store and so on. What happens? How does the story end?
Well, certainly this has gotten to be, the services business for Apple has gotten to be a fairly significant portion of their overall revenue pie. Last year, about $46 billion of what Apple made was coming out of services. These are fueled by third-party developers. Now, as we've read and know, Apple charges its third-party developers 30% of their revenues to actually have their products listed on the App Store. From the standpoint of business development, 30% is a pretty big cut. One would argue that Apple perhaps could get by with something half or less of that and still provide a very encouraging signal to its third-party developer community, and at the same time themselves grow a very substantial business. So clearly the argument here around the economics in terms of this business model, certainly Apple is in a position potentially to give more in order to maintain a vibrant third-party developer community.
David, a big part of the bull case for Apple stock is 5G, and the arrival of 5G presumably will spark a super cycle in phone replacements. And of course, Apple will benefit from that. What do you expect to hear? What have we heard at this conference about 5G and what it means for Apple?
Nothing in particular as of yet, but I would expect that the company should be making some indications that'll get people excited about the upcoming launch in late September of the 5G iPhone. Certainly the 5G iPhone, Apple in this regard is following other competitors, as Apple is wont to do in terms of adopting new technologies, but having an Apple product able of using 5G networks and the greater speeds and data capabilities those networks have, we do believe very much will prompt an upgrade in terms of the user base for the Apple iPhone. Something clearly, I think, that given the scale of Apple, should be an important development for them in terms of not only their smartphone business, but that of the overall smartphone market.
Tim Cook was very vocal today about the president's decision to suspend the giving out of H-1B visas through the end of the year, new ones at least. And I'm curious, David, will this have an immediate impact on Apple?
I think if there's anything that we've learned, not specifically from Apple, but more from dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, is that companies are more and more capable of operating on a distributed basis. We don't necessarily need to have workers co-located. Now, obviously the intent of the H-1B visa program was to be bringing workers physically into a location here in the United States in order to operate. I don't think that not having an H-1B visa program is going to be detrimental to Apple in the near term. The bigger implication, I think, not for Apple, but more for the U.S. economy, is that by potentially denying 525,000 high-paid workers presence in the United States economy, the Trump administration has deprived the U.S. economy of the spending that those 525,000 well-paid workers would bring with them. And so from this standpoint, it seems, to our view, sort of a cut-the-nose-off to spite your face kind of move by the Trump administration. Not very well informed and certainly misguided.
David, just got about a minute left. Is the overhang from regulatory risk that was building for the tech industry last year and going into this year, has that kind of abated given all that's going on in the world now?
I would say that, there are a matter of priorities or triage, if you will, in terms of dealing with the things that confront society, COVID-19 being first and foremost. But when things do settle down, once we get past the November election, I certainly do expect that there will continue to be demands for greater oversight with respect to the technology community, focus on data privacy, the extent to which media continues to be used and to be manipulated with regards to the upcoming election remains a vital concern. So, there's a great deal that still remains to be done. Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, certainly has broken ranks with others such as Zuckerberg in saying that they would take down political content or be more aggressive in policing this content. But no, we're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination as far as greater oversight of the technology community.
Hey, David, thanks so much for joining us. As always, a good wrap-up of kind of what's going on at Apple, their event this week, as well as all things technology. David Garrity, Chief Market Strategist at Laidlaw, and also a partner at BT Block, giving us his overview of the market. Vani, got another strong day in the markets here. We got the markets up about 0.9% on the S&P.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a continuation of the rally that we've been seeing that just doesn't ever end. Apple, at a record today as we talk to David. Yeah. Even with everything that's hanging over the company, it's just incredible. It's just an extraordinary chart. To bring up the chart for the stock over the life is just amazing story, and it continues to outperform. For Vonnie Quinn, I'm Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local listings. Interconnect.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. Why not book an MOT to get you safely back on the road? With over 600,000 carried out every year at 350 garages, you can always count on our experts. And get back to visiting those you've missed the most. Hi, Mum. From a safe distance, of course. From MOTs to battery replacements and tyre fittings, there's no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
My name is Danya. I moved to Manchester in 2010. I came from Afghanistan. The first school day was a bit tough. I had no friends, couldn't speak English, and felt a bit left out. My high school teacher was very supportive. She matched me up with friends that spoke the same language as me. Having friends gave me a lot of confidence. I felt like I'm not being left out.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Get free one-to-one support with our teacher training advisors to get one step closer to the classroom. Subject to eligibility. Search Get Into Teaching.
The Mini Electric was raring to go until ready, set, stop. We hit the power down switch. We waited. But now it's time to start up again. We're ready with the Mini Electric and whole Mini range online. Showroom safety measures are set, and we're feeling good to go. Find your perfect Mini at mini.co.uk.
When the world stopped, people in our local communities didn't. At the Co-op, we want to say thank you to all the local heroes. Daksha wanted to help the NHS, so she and her husband Parish cooked 50 meals for a hospital in Harrow. But they didn't stop there. They've set up the Community Response Kitchen, delivering to hospitals, schools and homeless shelters across London. Now they're delivering between 1,000 and 3,000 meals every day. And they've achieved all this with no funding, just the support of local businesses and local people. To Daksha and Parish and all the local heroes that keep our communities going, the Co-op says thank you.
We're all in uncharted territory looking for ways to support our communities. At Dell Technologies, we're making sure small businesses have the right tech solutions. Dell Technologies advisors are here for you, helping small businesses stay connected and productive while working remotely with Windows 10 Pro and Microsoft Teams. We're standing by you every step of the way. Call us today on 0800 169 1745. That's 0800 169 1745.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, welcome to Balance of Power, where the world of politics meets the world of business. I'm David Weston. I'm going to start with the markets again today, a risk-on sort of feel. Abigail Doolittle explains how much of that's really driven by tech, Abigail.
Tech is one of the top sectors for sure, David, and there is that risk-on tone. The bulls back out for a second day. This after a little bit of a wobble last week, but last week's stocks were higher as well. Over the last 2 weeks, though, basically in a range, except for the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ is putting another record high today, up 1.4% on that tech strength. And ironic about that tech strength, back in the day, it used to be a growth momentum sector, but this year, 2020, the year of the stay-at-home, it is actually a defensive sector. So the fact that tech is leading, yes, it is bullish and it is risk on. On the other hand, there are those defensive tones underneath. Apple and Amazon, two of those stocks hitting all-time highs. Again, big stay-at-home presences there. Interesting, last week, David, we of course talked about how Apple is reclosing some of their stores. This period right now reminds me just a little bit of late January January, early February, when the virus was raging in China, investors and traders here in the U.S. looking past it. Of course, we have spikes in certain parts of the U.S., and it's not clear what that will bring for the rest of the country right now. But again, traders looking past any negative possibility. However, David, from a cross-asset class standpoint, that's not entirely the case. The Haven Yen is in quite a rally over the last 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks. In fact, we have the Haven Yen up about 3%, quite a run. When you have investors seeking safety in that way, it tells you that they are either treading water or there's an actual hedge for some sort of risk off ahead. So it'll be very interesting to see whether or not the broader indexes, the sideways range that we've seen over the last couple of weeks, whether or not it breaks to the upside following the NASDAQ or the NASDAQ follows stocks down. But it does seem to be this overall optimism. Once again, we say it all the time, driven by the Fed, because there's not a lot changing fundamentally right now, except for this virus data and the uncertainty around that, David.
Yeah, that old don't fight the Fed. Thank you so much, Abigail Doolittle, for that report on the markets. Well, it turns out that the recovery depends not just on the coronavirus, and for that matter on what the government does to support the economy, but also to some degree on U.S.-China trade relations, as we saw overnight when the markets really reacted, the futures markets reacted in the news of that unfortunate comment by Peter Navarro that the president had to walk back. Well, somebody who really follows the recovery and particularly its effect on business particularly closely is Republican Senator Mike Braun of Indiana, himself a very successful businessman. So, Senator, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it. I want to talk about the recovery, but first, this is a big day for you because you're introducing a bill in Congress to help address some of the concerns about policing efforts that come in the tragic killing of George Floyd. Tell us about that bill, what it does, and why it's the necessary and appropriate reaction.
So we're going to have the Tim Scott bill be voted on tomorrow in terms of the first step of process. I'm a sponsor on that, and I'm going to vote to move that ahead. I believe, though, for Republicans and Democrats in this moment that's in front of us, we've got to do maybe something more than the lower hanging fruit that we both agree to. And that comes to this discussion of qualified immunity. And for business owners, people that come from Main Street like myself, accountability and transparency are a way of life. So I think for law enforcement, they're grappling with something that has stigmatized their business, all the good things they do because of these horrific incidents that occur far too often. So this bill addresses a law that's been in place since 1871 that had nothing touching it until the 60s when they started to judicially qualify immunity, and to where in the 80s it's gotten to the point where you can hardly redress or take to task these incidents that we all know need to be addressed. So this sets some clarification about when you have something that comes to the standard of a George Floyd, a Rayshard Brooks, Breonna Taylor, you've got to have some ability to hold people accountable. It also adds officially the organizations themselves into having that accountability. So far, anybody like me, this is easy because in most places you're fully accountable. You deal with full transparency. And David, I also make it analogous to healthcare. In the year and a half I've been here, I've been probably the most vocal Republican about the industry reforming itself. Be transparent. Embrace competition. Don't have barriers to entry. And that's been a tough struggle too, but I'll keep talking about it because I know it's right.
So, Senator, it may be easy, but the White House doesn't necessarily agree with you. A lot of your fellow Republicans don't necessarily agree with you, because what you would do is you would take a very broad immunity created by the Supreme Court and cut back so it would be easier to sue policemen. Are you at all concerned that policemen might be reluctant to do their jobs because they're afraid they might get a lawsuit?
That's a good question, and I'm not wanting to get rid of qualified immunity. I'm wanting to reform it. And Republicans have been about not touching it at all, and Democrats getting rid of it. And really all I'm doing is, I think, putting a template out there that will prevent the frivolous lawsuits, because it's too hard a job already to be hampered with that. But it will allow accountability on these egregious situations. And I think if we don't have something that's a smart balance between eliminating frivolous lawsuits but having accountability on the significant stuff, we're kicking it down the road and we won't really solve the problem. And maybe the president would be okay with something like that, and maybe Republicans would come around, and you might get Democrats coming this direction. Otherwise, it's like many things here. It takes a long time to reach resolution. I just think this is a moment in time where you do something.
So, Senator, let's turn to the question of the recovery, because we're all hoping for it. We're hoping it's going to come. At the same time, it seems a bit fragile right now. We get various news, including today we heard 31 states have a positive, that's over 1 R0 score, which means the disease is spreading. How concerned should we be? How concerned is the business community that, in fact, this coronavirus is going to have us either shut down or slow down again?
Well, if we do a shutdown again, someone needs to have their heads examined, because all along, that was only necessary in a few places where it just cascaded out of control. Shutting down early, opening up late, and a one-size-fits-all approach that many places took, that's going to make their recoveries harder. A couple things make me optimistic about how we're going to recover. Number one, we had the strongest economy that I had ever been a part of, and that was running my own enterprise for 37 years. We were in excellent shape going into it. Credit that to the job and tax cut bill of 2017, President Trump leading on it. If we go back to some of the policies and regulations that were in place before that, there'll be a tough recovery. But if we just take everything we've learned about the disease, we know a lot more about it now. It's got peculiarities, and entrepreneurs and business owners are good at multitasking. They shut down the entire downtown in my hometown. My wife's had a business that'll be 42 years this September. They would have been the ones most capable of distancing, wearing masks. And they have, like all business owners, great concern to keep their customers and their employees healthy. Going forward, I think you'll see, and we'll have the data, that the places that didn't take that overly prescriptive approach, where they were doing two things at once, are going to have good recoveries, and I think that's going to benefit the country in its entirety. The places that locked down too long, like a Kentucky or a Michigan, where they maybe didn't need to treat Detroit and the rest of the state the same way, or Louisville and Lexington, the rest of the state of Kentucky, Indiana had a pretty good balance, and I think we're going to recover accordingly.
Senator, how much more help do we need from the Congress? It looks like you're going to have a pretty busy July, because a lot of people are talking about a couple of cliffs that may be coming up in the middle and the end of the month, particularly unemployment insurance and some other assistance to the economy. What are you in favor of Congress doing at this point, if anything, before you go on August recess?
Yeah, I think Leader McConnell's got that right. We need to see how 1, 2, 3, and 3.5 have been working. We're not using all of the PPP due to the fact that it's now got some guidance on it that is keeping it from going to larger small businesses and trying to get to the places that need it the most. And if this recovery does what I think it's going to do, and I think President Trump has set the stage for that, and certain governors that were a little more, willing to take some risk, maybe we won't need it. And that doesn't mention the fact that we've spent $2.8 trillion and we're running $1 trillion structural deficits. So I think we got to be very careful about what we do going forward. And I think that rather than maybe adding flexibility, finding what we might have missed on the first go around, I'm hoping that it doesn't take anything significant out of D.C. We borrowed every penny that we put towards it. I was okay with it back then because of the uncertainty. Now let's emphasize on smartly reopening the economy, and hopefully that'll do the heavy lifting.
Okay, thank you so much, Senator. It's always great to have you with us. That is Senator Mike Braun of the state of Indiana. Coming up here, we're going to be talking with Jaron Smith. He is the President's Assistant for Domestic Policy. We're going to talk to him about how to get the economy going, particularly when it comes to the less fortunate. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Market upheaval.
The Mini Electric was raring to go until ready, set, stop. We hit the power down switch. We waited. But now it's time to start up again. We're ready with the Mini Electric and whole Mini range online. Showroom safety measures are set, and we're feeling good to go. Find your perfect Mini at mini.co.uk.
So, you've been holed up for a while.
Not in here!
The place has got a little, let's say, lived in. At Wix, we'll create your dream kitchen or bathroom from design to show-off ready. And to keep everything safe, you can book a free virtual design appointment. Plus, now there's up to 50% off kitchen installation and 15% off bathroom installation. Cure your house embarrassment safely with Wix. For qualifying spend, terms and exclusions, visit wix.co.uk.
There's a reason flash storage is called flash storage and not electronic non-volatile computer memory storage. From quick and efficient data retrieval to instant scalability, everything about IBM flash storage is fast. It's also cloud-ready and surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £310 for 24 terabytes of all flash. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Find out more at ibm.biz/flash offer.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen. You can do your bit by working from home if you can. Avoid public transport and walk or cycle to work or school wherever possible. We're increasing the number of buses, trains and tubes we run, but they may still be busy during peak hours. If you must use public transport, avoid early mornings between 5:45 and 8:15 and evenings between 4 and 5:30. This will help those who must travel at this time to do so safely. Search TfL Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Stay close to College Hoops Conversation with College Basketball Talk Podcast from NBC Sports. Join Rob Dowster and Bobby Reagan for weekly recaps of what's happening in every conference. Nostalgic flashbacks to classic games. And big picture discussions of the future of the sport.
Always knew was a legend, and you always knew was one of the great coaches because everyone always told you how great this coach was. But he never really reached point of either.
Search College Basketball Talk on TuneIn to listen.
Ready for some straight talk on what's happening in the MLB? On the Barstool Sports Podcast starting 9, Dallas Braden and Jared Carrabis cut through the BS to break down the league the way they really see it.
Yeah, we're continuing our little mini-series of college baseball coaches in addition to bringing you major league players from throughout the league. If you've been listening to Starting 9 for some time now, you know that we've had a big leaguer on every single episode for probably 2 years now.
Search Starting 9 on TuneIn to listen.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
He does! Fabry wins it!
To standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Remember, 6 feet, it's the rule. Stay your distance and always wear a mask while you're out. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
Are you ready for the realest first-hand take of what's happening in the NBA? On their podcast, All the Smoke, former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson bring their fiery intensity to the mic, dishing on the latest news and drama from on and off the court without boundaries.
Half man, half amazing. My friend, our brother, Vince Carter, man. Welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up, man?
What's up, my brother?
Man,
Search All the Smoke on TuneIn to listen.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
This is Mike Golick Jr. from ESPN's Golick and Wingo. Every morning, Wingo Dad and I sit down and discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golick and Wingo to start listening today.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Business and finance have always held surprises, but this is brand new.
The move risks fueling more demonstrations, and Stokes' concern that essential freedoms will be curbed.
Karen Muskow and Nathan Hager.
Chinese lawmakers approved national security legislation.
Expert navigation through uncharted territory.
Tell us the range of outcomes that we could see on that front.
Bloomberg Daybreak, weekday mornings at 5 Eastern. On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Well, John Smith is the Deputy Assistant to the President of Trump, and also Deputy Director for the Office of American Innovation. He is one of the people advising the President on how we can support this economic recovery, and we welcome him now to Bloomberg. Mr. Smith, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it. Give us your perspective on exactly what the White House, what the administration is planning to do to support this nascent, if I can call it, that recovery. We had our ways to go, clearly.
Sure, we do have a ways to go. As you can imagine, we did 2 rounds of the PPP program. Most recently, we did a carve-out for minority-owned firms and used the leverage the CDFI's relationship with minority businesses. What we're looking now is as we're going into the summer and possible 4th package, we're looking at ways to create new access to capital through the Minority Business Development Agency.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. The CDFI is the Community Development Financial Institution, as I understand it, that really addresses some of the unbanked and underbanked in our inner cities and also rural areas. So specifically, everybody's been hit by this pandemic, but the less fortunate about us, sadly, have been hit harder, particularly among the black and the Hispanic population. We've seen this, including in the unemployment, which is ticking up when everybody else is going down. What specifically can be targeted to affect those minority populations to help them? Because they need it the most, it appears.
Sure. So what we learned from carving out through the CDFI, I think we carved out about $30 billion. And recently, 3 weeks ago, we carved an additional $10 billion for those CDFIs to work with minority-owned firms. The issue that we ran into was many minority-owned firms weren't applying for that PPP resources. And so we're still looking at 40% of African-American businesses possibly not being able to recover or come back. And so what the president intends to do, which is very intentional, is what he announced in Dallas, is if we were able to make the Minority Business Development Agency permanent, we would create a relationship with the CDFI fund as well as the SBA administration and create 3 different access to capital routes, all tied to financial literacy and financial coaching. We think that would be a great way to take these minority firms, which is 90% of them are single-person firms, and mature them and help them grow. And we think that would create jobs and deal with income inequality in the black and Hispanic community.
Are there the funds available to do that? I mean, the CARES Act appropriated an awful lot of money, but a lot of it's already been dispersed. Do you need another round, a fourth round of stimulus to really help support you in this effort for minority businesses?
So there's resources available at Treasury from the last economic downturn, the Main Street program, that possibly could be leveraged as a backstop for some of these CDFIs to expand their ability to do loans. And we would tie that, of course, to the ability for those institutions to also teach people how to navigate the financial system and mature as businesses. Another thing that we're looking at is the Small Business Equity Program, SBIC, over at the SBA, and figuring out ways to get a more diverse pool of equity managers from the African American and Hispanic community. That way we can have more individuals with expertise on the community in areas that we should invest. I think with those two new pools of capital, that will go a long way in growing access to capital for minority communities.
More broadly, Mr. Smith, what's your understanding, what's your thinking about the causes of the growing inequality, economic inequality in this country? If you go back through history, from World War II up to about 1980 or so, actually things were getting more equal, and then they really diverged after that, under Republican and Democratic presidents, I must add. What was the cause of that? What led to that?
Sure. Well, I definitely think moving a lot of our manufacturing jobs overseas contribute to that. So you had less blue-collar individuals that were on that economic mobility trajectory. And so that's one of the chief reasons why President Trump wanted to run for office, was to bring jobs back to America and put America first. And so since we've started doing that, you've easily seen unemployments go really low, especially for the African American community and Hispanic community, even record lows. And we were starting to nudge at that economic mobility piece. But we also are encouraging investment into low-income areas through opportunity zones. And so that, combined with access to capital, may be a secret ingredient to really creating robust economies and distressed communities around the country.
Mr. Smith, what about the role of education in all of this? Because even with manufacturing jobs, increasingly, they're much more technical than they were 30 years ago, 40 years ago. We need a different level of education, and there's a growing disparity in this country as well in the education between the haves and the have-nots. What does the administration want to do about that? How can we address that fundamental issue?
That's definitely been a fundamental issue that Ivanka Trump has offered some solutions to under the Trump administration through the Council of the American Worker by getting the commitment from many of the big companies for the training to fill that gap of the 7 million jobs that's been in field historically. But I think it's also us investing in tele-infrastructure and telecommunications, so we have more communities that are tapped in, especially since we had the COVID pandemic and so many people had to stay at home and quarantine. Having access to the internet has become even more important. And so what we're looking at ways is to look at our R&D money and invest into minority serving institutions. A good example of that maybe today, where we announced that we want to invest in Morehouse and help scale the work that they're doing on minority health. That easily opens up pipelines for more people to work in the minority healthcare space. And so, yes, education is a core pillar of it. And going back to our capital conversation, that's why we want to tie things to financial coaching and financial literacy. But education is definitely a core pillar of that.
So you raised such a profound point, that is to say the access to broadband. I mean, we're all experiencing this firsthand as we try to work from home, learn from home, do our consultations with our doctors from home, things like that. Why can't we get that done? People have talked about that for years now, and there, as you know, is a great disparity. By the way, it's not just urban. There's also some rural areas that really need access to broadband. Why can't we have an infrastructure bill get that done?
Well, I think that's the focus of the Trump administration. We're going to try to work with Congress and get more resources to do just that. And so hopefully Congress does the right thing and then follow our lead. But we certainly see the need for doing it, and we're going to definitely do all we can administratively, but also make a pitch to Congress to get it done.
Also, what about healthcare? Because one of the things I think we saw the effects of through pandemic, and that differential effect on Black and Hispanic communities, was they don't always have the same access to healthcare. What does the administration propose to do to make sure that all Americans, no matter how wealthy or poor they are, really have something like adequate access to healthcare?
Sure. So we've done a lot of investment into telehealth as well as mobile health clinics. And so we'll continue to roll many of that out. But we also invested through the CARES Act $2 billion into community health centers around the country. And many of those are in minority communities and rural communities. But I think a way to go even further is, again, with that announcement we did with Morehouse, is investing money to learn more about, scale the activities of an institution that knows more about minority health and African American community than most institutions. And so if we can scale their research and outcomes, it can touch more communities. And so there are other institutions similar to that, like Meharry Medical School and Drew College. We've also been working with Howard University, my alma mater. All four of those institutions, if we can invest in their healthcare infrastructure, we can scale all across the country, specifically for minorities. And so we intend to do the same thing for the Hispanic institutions as well as tribal.
So finally, Mr. Smith, what about the communications front in this sense? Do you feel like you're getting your message out? You've mentioned quite a few programs here. I'm not sure that all Americans understand what it is that's being done. What are the efforts being made by the president or by the White House to really communicate with African American and Hispanic communities what you're trying to get done?
Sure. Well, it definitely helps being on your show, Dave. But I think we're going to try our best to get on all types of different media platforms, but also working with influencers. You know, we spent the last 3 months before the protests meeting with 500,000 African-American leaders, 500,000 Hispanic leaders, because those influencers connect to the community. So whether it's churches or influencers, those are the two ways to really get the word out. But it's not an easy job, but we're going to keep at it until we get the job done.
Okay, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being with us. That's Jaron Smith. He's Deputy Assistant to President Trump. Coming up here next, we're going to talk with the former head of health for the state of Louisiana about the state of the coronavirus epidemic right now in the United States of America. That's coming up on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks are climbing amid a report that President Trump supports sending another round of stimulus checks to Americans, and on data that shows manufacturing is near expansion. The housing sector is looking up. New home sales rose more than expected in May as record low mortgage rates pulled buyers back into the housing market. Purchases of single-family homes climbed 16.6%. But bankruptcy filings are piling up in the aftermath of the coronavirus. Data compiled by Bloomberg showed 13 U.S. companies sought bankruptcy protection last week, matching the peak of the global financial crisis in 2009. Consumer and energy businesses accounted for most of the failures. On Wall Street, the Dow is up 210 points, NASDAQ up 125, S&P 500 up 30 points. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
Gathering world-renowned experts takes effort.
We have the perfect person.
Asking them the right questions takes Carol Mazur and Jason Kelly.
Is this possibly early indications of a second wave?
Bloomberg Business Week.
Silicon Valley will be forever changed by this pandemic. What's your take?
Are they paying off their balances?
Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern.
That is a significant shift.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. A surge in coronavirus cases has caused some states to consider maybe going backwards and shutting people in more than they had after having liberalized things, particularly in places like Florida and Texas, Arizona, and California. We welcome now Dr. Rebecca Gee. She used to be the Secretary of the Louisiana Department of Health. Now she is CEO of LSU Health New Orleans. So, Dr. Gee, welcome back to Bloomberg. Great to have you here. I heard this morning that we have 31 states, a majority of states now, that have that R0 number, which is critical, over 1. That is a bad thing, as I understand it, because that means you're expanding rather than contracting.
Yeah, look, what we're seeing is corona fatigue. You know, we may be done with this virus, but the virus is not done with us. And so as a result of folks getting a little more sloppy, not practicing the Holy Trinity, the hand washing, social distancing, and wearing masks, these rates have gone up, and in more than half of our states, cases are increasing, and the trends aren't looking good.
What are we learning about the virus? Because every time I read one thing, then I see something different. For example, initially we were told during the summer it'll start going away. Now Dr. Fauci today said, no, it's not going away this summer. We don't think we're going to get a lull. On the other hand, it looks like more young people are getting it in some of these states, like 25 to 35-year-olds instead of the old people. And then there's a death rate question. Is the virus changing, or is just our information changing about it?
Well, both, right? So viruses mutate. Viruses, similar to what we know about evolution, viruses that live in more successfully in different environments are the ones that tend to propagate more. We know now that the viruses that spread through Europe and that are here are more infectious than Wuhan. The viruses that were in Wuhan, they have more attachments on their cells that can grab onto things. So yeah, the virus is mutating. The good news is usually if you have a pandemic, if something kills a lot of people, it usually doesn't spread as fast. So hopefully it's mutating to be not quite as bad as it was, but we're still learning that. And we do know a couple of key things, and I would put them in 4 categories, time, people, space, and place. So time. We know that the more time you spend around someone who has COVID, the more likely you are to get it. We know, people. We know the more people you're with, the more likely you are to get it. Just the statistical chance. We have to assume COVID's circulating. It hasn't gone anywhere. We're not done with the first wave. So the more people you're around, the more likelihood that you will get it. Space. So are you outside? Are you inside? Outside's better. Outside, the more air circulation you have, the more the virus gets blown around, and the less likely it is going to land in your mouth or nose or eyes. And then place, how close are you to other people when you are in an environment where you're around them? So stay 6 feet apart. Those are the simple concepts that are reinforced and that we continue to know. The virus will change. Look, young people are being more sloppy than older people. Here in New Orleans, you see folks are not going out who are older. They're still getting groceries delivered. And you see, now we've had a couple of outbreaks with college kids and folks having graduation parties. They're getting more sloppy. The good news is that younger people do better when they get the virus, but the bad news is younger people can spread this virus to older people who are at a high risk of dying from it. So, we know something, but there are other things that are, people are getting virus fatigue and they're getting sloppy, and that's resulting in these numbers.
Picking up on that, today there was a report out of France that suggested that they did a study of several thousand school kids and said that even though the school kids got it, they appeared not to transmit it to one another or to adults. Is that reliable? Do we have any sense of that? Because a lot of us are thinking forward toward the fall and wondering what's going to happen with schools, with colleges, universities around the country.
Yeah, I'm a parent of 5 kids, and my dad's a university president, so I feel like I'm in the middle of this every day. There's some good news about kids. There was some data out of England and Wales that said if you live in England and Wales and you're a small child, you're more likely to be hit by lightning than to die of COVID. We're seeing some really positive data on children not being super spreaders, as you mentioned. And even here in Louisiana, some data that show, look, mom and dad got the virus, but little children are not getting that at the same rate, whether it's because their immune systems are more capable, whether it's because they're exposed to more coronaviruses throughout the year and they have some a little bit more immunity. We don't yet know, but that's certainly positive data. And I think the thinking is shifting around children, that the impact of having kids at home, the lack of educational opportunities and socialization is really taking a toll, not only on these kids, but on their parents. Now, by the way, we now understand that child care is not just a women's issue, and that families can't work if kids aren't in school or in some kind of environment. So I do think that if only for the reasons that it's necessary for society to function, we're going to have to get back to school. And the data show that there is less risk than we had initially feared.
Less risk right now. What about come the regular flu season? We now have also the federal health authorities warning that we may have a real double whammy here if we get coronavirus coming back along with the flu. What can we do to prepare for that possibility come November, December?
Yeah. Well, goodness gracious, people have got to get a flu vaccine. I mean, if this epidemic doesn't convince people that vaccines are valuable, vaccines are the thing that are hanging in the balance right now that will allow us to return to normal. I hope this ends this stupid anti-vaccine, debates that we've had. Let's just get our vaccines. The vaccines are the single most important public health and healthcare life-saving invention in the history of mankind. So please get your vaccine so you don't get the flu. So that's the thing we need to do to prepare. But also, we here in Louisiana at one point, and here at LSU, one of the hospitals that we were overseeing, looking at and staffing, 2 ventilators away from running out at the worst peak. And so this is a serious problem, but we've also gotten better at treating it. We know now not to put people immediately on vents. We know now that hydroxychloroquine doesn't work. It actually makes it worse. So we know more now. We're more prepared to treat it. Our doctors are more veteran, and people who are vulnerable at least know it's out there, unlike what was happening in our country in February, where it was an invisible virus. Now it's visible, and the more we test, the more light will be shined on it. And so we'll be in better shape, but people have got to go get that vaccine. And the lack of primary care and emergency medicine utilization is a real problem. We published a study last week in Health Affairs that showed that here in New Orleans, there was a 50% drop in people who went to the emergency room for a stroke or a heart attack. And that's a real problem. That means that people are dying at home. And so people have to get over their fear also of going to a doctor. We've got safe practices in place. There's a risk to everything. There's no way you could say there's no risk, but it's low risk. So go get your vaccines, go get your medical care, get your colonoscopy, because we've got to also take care of ourselves while we also have to do this dance with this virus.
And finally, Dr. Gee, you raised the question of a vaccine. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, what are you expecting? I understand there's a bell curve. You can't predict it for sure. But is it realistic to have a vaccine that can actually be administered by the end of the year, at least the first quarter of next year? What do you really think is realistic?
Look, I don't know. Tony Fauci says maybe, and we all hope for that. We've got to, the entire world, scientific community is focused on this. We've also got to focus on manufacturing, and that's something I'm working on in the United States. We've got to make drugs here. We've got to make vaccines here, because if we rely only on China and India and other places, we'll stand in line. Why would they give it to us first? Right? So we've got to address all of this as we work to make this vaccine available, and we're working on that here at LSU, and others are working on it. But look, I'm very hopeful. And you've also got, I wanted to mention, our shining light of Louisiana has been doing a good job. There are states that are doing a good job while we're in this phase before the vaccine. And so we do need to look to those positive practices. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Look to where states are doing well, and try to replicate some of these practices as we wait for the vaccine. And we all hope it will come. And again, let's stop with the debates over whether we should have vaccines or not, and hopefully, people will get it when it's available. And let's get prepared to make sure that the United States can be able to provide it to our people, and as quickly as possible once it gets developed.
Right. Doctor, really thank you so much for being here. That's Dr. Rebecca Gee. She is CEO of LSU Health New Orleans. Coming up here, there's been a roller coaster ride in the markets because of some unfortunate remarks out of the White House about China. We're going to talk with Dr. Richard Haas. He is the president of the Council on Foreign Relations about U.S.-China relations and his new book and what they tell us about it. That's coming up on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Corona. Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Tuesday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
The Mini Electric was raring to go until ready, set, stop. We hit the power down switch. We waited. But now it's time to start up again. We're ready with the Mini Electric and whole Mini range online. Showroom safety measures are set, and we're feeling good to go. Find your perfect Mini at mini.co.uk.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to a robot or to someone called Robert or Chantel or Raj or Fiona or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hey, I'm Ali. How can I help?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
When the world stopped, people in our local communities didn't. At the Co-op, we want to say thank you to all the local heroes. Daksha wanted to help the NHS, so she and her husband Parish cooked 50 meals for a hospital in Harrow. But they didn't stop there. They've set up the Community Response Kitchen, delivering to hospitals, schools and homeless shelters across London. Now they're delivering between 1,000 and 3,000 meals every day. And they've achieved all this with no funding, just the support of local businesses and local people. To Daksha and Paresh and all the local heroes that keep our communities going, the Co-op says thank you.
Unpredictability. It's just part of life when you're living with a health condition. What you feel like you can do can change day to day, and that's okay. 15 of the UK's leading health charities have come together to support people with health conditions in finding ways to move more in whatever way works for you. It's the fact that we get moving that makes us feel undefeatable. For ways to move more, search We Are Undefeatable.
Are you ready for the realest first-hand take of what's happening in the NBA? On their podcast, All the Smoke, former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson bring their fiery intensity to the mic, dishing on the latest news and drama from on and off the court without boundaries.
Half man, half amazing. My friend, our brother, Vince Carter, man. Welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up, man? What's up, my brother? Man,
Search All the Smoke on TuneIn to listen.
Ready for some straight talk on what's happening in the MLB? On the Barstool Sports Podcast starting 9, Dallas Braden and Jared Carrabis cut through the BS to break down the league the way they really see it.
Yeah, we're continuing our little mini-series of college baseball coaches in addition to bringing you major league players from throughout the league. If you've been listening to Starting 9 for some time now, you know that we've had a big leaguer on every single episode for probably 2 years now.
Search Starting 9 on TuneIn to listen.
Looking to freshen up your listening on TuneIn? Head to the homepage to discover something new. There you'll see custom recommendations based on your listening habits, along with new episodes of shows you've enjoyed in the past. Uncover your next audio obsession on the homepage.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Remember, 6 feet. It's the rule. Stay your distance and always wear a mask while you're out. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
Ready for a one-of-a-kind look at the NFL? On the PFF NFL podcast, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Munson interpret the unique stats of Pro Football Focus to analyze the league, uncover secret superstars, and discuss which teams to watch out for in the next Super Bowl.
Let's talk some football. Let's do it, Steve. All sorts of stuff. We're going to do most improved defenses around the NFL. Solomon Wilcots, our very own. He went into some detail over at PFF.com. Most improved defenses around the NFL.
Search PFF NFL on TuneIn to listen.
This is Mike Golic Jr. from ESPN's Golic and Wingo. Every morning, Wingo, Dad, and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golic and Wingo to start listening today.
Again, they are natural partners. They're natural allies to rein in China. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, the first big foreign policy decision this president made was not to join the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Well, that was the best way to associate ourselves with any number of like-minded countries, and we could have raised the standards that China would have to meet in the way of trade. So again, we talk tough on occasion, but again, the policy is somewhere between weak and incoherent.
So I think a supporter of President Trump, if he or she were here, would say, wait a second, the multilateral didn't really work well with China. I mean, take the example of WTO. We let them in thinking they'd really accommodate their system to the WTO, and if anything, the reverse worked. It didn't happen. So is it fair to say President Trump needed to go a different direction because the multilateral just wasn't working with China?
Fair enough, and I think he gets points for having pointed out the problem, but you've got to replace a flawed system with something better. And that's where it is falling short. I think a lot of people were unrealistic about what they thought China's membership in the WTO would accomplish. They were never going to be turned into a parliamentary democracy. They were never going to be turned into a free market. So I think it was naive to expect that the most you could expect, I thought, was that China would continue to act in terms of its foreign policy in a somewhat restrained way, and by and large, they did. But once they were in, we should have monitored it closely. And as China got more and more powerful economically, the terms should have been tightened and adjusted. They weren't. And that's, again, where TPP came in. That was the way to essentially introduce a new broadly held set of standards, and we didn't do it. And I just say, the administration trashed it, but it couldn't have been so bad because they borrowed from it heavily when they negotiated the USMCA with Mexico and Canada.
Is there a way to really deal with China effectively on these economic issues because their structure is so different? As you point out in your book, actually, you talk about the fact that the WTO would have to adjust to a world in which there's so many state subsidies, the state-owned enterprises over there, what they've done with technology transfer, things like that. Is there a way multilaterally to handle those fundamental structural differences in an economy?
Not through the WTO, because by definition, you got to get everybody to agree to it. So I think the WTO is pretty much reduced now to simply being an adjudication tribunal where there are disputes. I think you're going to have to negotiate the new rules of trade through bilateral or multilateral arrangements. And that's why, again, I keep coming back to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And I think with China, we've got to be realistic. You are never going to get China to agree to taking the government out of economic policy. They're not going to stop subsidies and all that. So what it means to me then is, okay, if we can't get them to stop, how do we outcompete with them? Why is this administration cutting the amount of basic research it's spending, money it's spending on basic research for the American economy? Why did they make the decision they made in the last 24 hours on high-skilled immigrants? We can outcompete China. And so we don't need to look to trade agreements to right the balance between ourselves and China. We can do that ourselves.
You talk about the liberal world order and the fact that we've really gotten past it. It was constructed really by the United States with allies after World War II. Is it too late to go back to something approaching that? Because let's be frank, after World War II, America was sort of bestride the world. We really could almost dictate terms to much of the world. We don't have that same relative power today. How could you construct or reconstruct a new liberal world order?
I think it'd be tough for the reasons you say. We had real chances maybe 30 years ago at the end of the Cold War, and we kind of muffed it then. It doesn't compare favorably to what we did after World War II. So I don't think you could do it. Russia, China, too many other countries are not interested in liberalism. We ourselves are not interested in playing a certain kind of a role. But I think if we work together with our natural partners and allies in Europe, as well as Asia and a few other more democratic market-oriented countries, we could set the foundation. And it would be everything from how to deal with climate change to how to structure the cyberspace domain and so forth. And on occasion, we could maybe get even the Chinese to work with us. But we'll never create a global order that's totally open or liberal. But we could get a big chunk of the world on our side.
So finally, Richard, I think we have a reasonable sense of how President Trump, if he's reelected in November, will continue his foreign policy. So let's take the other side of it. If by any chance former Vice President Joe Biden were elected and he called you up and said, give me the first thing I should do as a new president, what would you tell him?
I'd say the first thing you should do is basically reinvigorate our alliances. Spend time in Europe, in Asia, or send the Secretary of State there to do that. That's the big force multiplier of American foreign policy. And some specific things you could easily do is stop the withdrawal of U.S. forces from Germany and so forth. But if I had to choose one thing, I would resurrect our allies, because that's the best way I know, David, to leverage and multiply American power without our having to spend or do more.
Okay, thank you so much to Richard Haas. He is, of course, the president of the Council on Foreign Relations, but also he's the author of this great new book, The World, A Brief Introduction. Coming up, Bloomberg Invest starts next hour. We're going to be hearing from the PIMCO CEO. He is Manny Roman, and also Carlyle Group co-CEO. He is Q-Song Lee. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Working from home, take a little more time for breakfast. Tom Keene.
How will this pandemic change your NASDAQ?
Jonathan Farrow.
When you look at that sector, some of these companies won't exist, will they?
And Lisa Abramowitz.
They've only continued to increase the delinquencies and defaults.
Crunch data topped with fresh world news. Bloomberg Surveillance. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. And now, watch us on Bloomberg Television.
Sweet strawberry icing. You're in Goodwill, and just past that vintage denim jacket you spot miniature donut earrings. You lean in. Ah, that's the scent of shopping success. Because at Goodwill, every item you buy funds local job training and more. So bring home those donut earrings and bring home so much good to your community. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. It is now for our stock of the hour. It is Inovio. The biotech company has a promising candidate for a vaccine for coronavirus, and now the Defense Department has contracted with them on their vaccine delivery system. Here to give us the full story is Kaylee Lines. Kaylee?
Yeah, David. Well, Inovia is seeing a big rally today off the back of it, trading at a fresh record high. It's up right now by about 42%, bringing its year-to-date rally to a whopping 560%. But of course, on the news today, the Department of Defense giving them a $71 million contract to support the manufacture and procurement for its Selectra devices, essentially a vaccine delivery system. It's currently used for immune system boosters to fend off against chemical warfare, but could eventually be used to deliver the company's COVID-19 DNA vaccine candidate directly into the skin. That's, of course, INO 4800, which the company started developing all the way back in January. It began human trials in April, and we should get those phase 1 results within the next week or so. The phase 2 and 3 efficacy trials are planned for later this summer. One analyst over at Stifel writing about this DoD news today, this contract win for Inovia, he said it's incrementally positive development for the company and says that it increases the likelihood that the company will get separate funding for the vaccine itself. Because as we know, there have been many tons and billions of dollars poured into vaccine candidates. The U.S. government, for example, has already pledged up to $1.2 billion for AstraZeneca to help make the University of Oxford vaccine. There have been grants given to J&J, Moderna, and Sanofi as well. So these are some of the most high-profile candidates, but there are more than 130 vaccines currently under development overall, David.
Yeah, exactly. More than 130 vaccines under development. Although, when we talked to the Inovio CEO about 2 or 3 weeks ago, they had one of the candidates that was furthest along with AstraZeneca and some others as a practical matter. Is the Defense Department putting money into other vaccines as well, or is it really just Inovio they're focused on?
Yeah, it's interesting. This is the only one from the Defense Department that we've seen recently. Of course, a lot of those grants that we've seen have been coming from Health and Human Services, the HHS department, excuse me, David. But of course, this is a big priority for the U.S. government. We heard Dr. Anthony Fauci of the NIH is testifying on Capitol Hill today, saying that vaccine is really critical to overcoming this virus. He says it's a matter of when, not if, we get a vaccine, and actually that he expects us to have one by the end of the year. But of course, it takes a lot of funding to make that happen, especially at the scale with which it needs to happen in order to see us out the other side of this pandemic, David.
Yeah. An interesting little fact about Inovio, actually, is they get funding, including from the Gates Foundation. The Gates Foundation has given them some of their funding, so they've got some nonprofit supporters as well. So they have enough of a balance sheet, it appears, to follow through, Kaylee.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about that scale and the ability to have that cash in order to make the development happen, because we know that there is a lot of work involved in the vaccine development process.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so very much, Kaylee. Really appreciate it. That's our stock of the hour. It is the biotech company Inovio, which is really on the rise, without a doubt. Okay, coming up in the second hour of Balance of Power, which will be on radio, we're going to have some from Bloomberg Invest, some very prominent figures. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. The masters of the diamond world are losing control. For years, De Beers and Alrosa have kept a tight grip on the rough diamond trade. But with the coronavirus wreaking havoc through the industry, that control is now disintegrating. No longer are the 10 times a year sales working, where a hand-picked list of customers had to buy exactly the amount of gems the duopoly offered at whatever price it chose. Both refusing to cut prices, De Beers struggled to generate much interest for a recent sale, and at Alrosa, at least 5 buyers have broken from their long-term contracts. The guitar Kurt Cobain played at Nirvana's 1993 MTV Unplugged concert sold for a record $6 million at auction in Beverly Hills, 6 times the original estimate. Julian's Auctions has sold other Cobain memorabilia in the past, including a cigarette-burned cardigan worn at the same MTV performance for $334,000. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
You're living in a world built on science, political and economic.
You've got to believe the labour market gets hit.
Computer and medical.
Clarify where we are on a test.
It all makes a difference.
What do you think needs to happen in terms of governmental response?
And it's all here.
He expects the virus to peak quite a long time from now.
Get your science straight.
The hand-washing campaign, is this actually a good strategy?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelleton. Another rally, stocks now at the highest since June 10th. Amid a report, President Trump supports sending another round of checks to Americans. Also, data showed that U.S. manufacturing nearing expansion. Oil advanced, the dollar retreated. Let's begin with crude oil. It is up today, trading above $41 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate crude, little changed right now. Did get above 41, as I mentioned right now. $40.74 a barrel. Brent up 0.1% at $43.14. Gold up 0.6%, higher by $11 the ounce at $17.65. The 10-year down 2/30 seconds. The yield right now 0.71%. Stocks higher, close to session highs. In fact, Nasdaq up the high of the day. Nasdaq also at a record, up 139 points, up 1.4% in the year-to-date column on the Bloomberg. Nasdaq is now up by 13.6%. To put that in context, the S&P 500 index year-to-date is down by 2.6%. S&P up 29, a gain of 0.9%. The Dow advancing 226 points, up by 0.9%. Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis President Jim Bullard says the strategy of capping Treasury yields out to a certain maturity may not work, and such yield curve control seems unnecessary with the market pricing in rates near zero out into the future. Bullard made the comment in a wide-ranging interview with Bloomberg Radio and Television this morning, where he also talked about the coronavirus and the government and the Fed's response.
Given the nature of the shock and the depth of the shock, this has all gone pretty well so far. And I think July 1st is a good checkpoint because I've long advocated that the main impact will be the second quarter of 2020. And its third quarter will be kind of the opposite of the first quarter. First quarter is a big decline. Third quarter will be a big increase as many businesses come back online safely.
It is 1:02 on Wall Street. Time now for the Market Drivers Report with a focus on American depository receipts. And here is Dave Wilson.
Thanks, Charlie. ADRs are rising more than U.S. shares. The S&P ADR index is up 1.2%, and the S&P 500 is higher by 1%. The Netherlands Aegon has risen 7.9% in U.S. trading. The owner of U.S.-based insurance company Transamerica named British executive Duncan Russell to the new post of Chief Transformation Officer. Russell previously worked with Aegon CEO Lard Friese at another Dutch insurer, NN Group. Germany's Wirecard has rallied 30.5% after plunging the past 3 days by a total of 87%. The payment processor's former CEO, Markus Braun, was arrested as part of a probe into an accounting scandal that involves $2.1 billion in missing cash. China's ZTE has lost 4.8%. The phone equipment maker discloses its controlling shareholder reduced its stake on Monday by selling the equivalent of about $114 million of stock. The seller is a company with ties to ZTE's founders. And Germany's BioNTech has fallen 6.8%. The developer of a COVID-19 vaccine is lower after U.S. rival Translate Bio signed an expanded agreement with France's Sanofi. Now, BioNTech is working with U.S.-based Pfizer on its vaccine, Charlie.
And we thank you very much, Dave Wilson, keeping track of those American depository receipts. Again, recapping, equities higher across the board, S&P up 30, up by 1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power.
Everybody in the world has one common enemy, and that's to win the war against this virus.
The first thing you do is listen to the medical professionals.
Those people that lost their pay, we want to see that pay continued.
Where the world of politics meets the world of business.
Our priority is the health and well-being and the lives of the American people.
We want to make sure that we are continuing to support our hospitals.
We've unleashed our most potent weapon of all, the courage of the American people.
Balance of Power.